Ciao.
Gianni l'ho visto.
Sì, buongiorno. Volevo solo dire che ho inviato il link alla professoressa Golub.
Sì, ma
l'altro
la
aggiuntivo.
professoressa Golub si è già connessa.
Ok.
E io gli ho detto, siccome aveva altre cose da fare, che la discussione della tesi di Angela sarà intorno alle 4, 4 e un quarto. E quindi lei si collega poi a quell'ora.
Ottimo. Abbasso la mano.
Poi Francesco l'ho visto.
Ci sono, ciao a tutti.
Ciao Francesco. Fabio l'ho visto. Sabrina Cavatorto c'è. Quindi ci manca Alessandra. Visto che però Alessandra ha le prime due tesi, io aspetterei 2 minuti, perché tra l'altro mi ha chiesto di anticipare, diciamo, di mantenere l'ordine perché poi ha un altro impegno. E quindi se siete d'accordo aspettiamo 2 minuti. Ci sentite tutti bene senza problemi, vero? Ottimo, ottimo. Io ovviamente non ho niente, non ho la proclamazione, non ho niente, ma insomma va bene lo stesso. Farò a memoria. Aspettiamo un attimo Alessandra. Ma siamo già in diretta, vero? Sì.
Sì, siamo già in diretta, quindi stai attento, Andrea.
Ma ci vedono di già? Sì?
Io penso di sì.
Ascolta, ma poi...
Non so se c'è la registrazione, se la diretta passa, ma la registrazione rimane.
Siccome io volevo fumare una sigaretta ora...
Non credo.
Però non so se staccare la telecamera oppure no. È brutto dopo cattivo esempio?
Come presidente non puoi.
Ah, ecco, allora non fumo, vabbè.
Andrea, scusa, chi è il primo candidato? Che anch'io non mi ritrovo la lista.
Il primo candidato, questa è la lista dei candidati. Lorenzo Laruina con Alessandra Viviani, poi abbiamo Giamila Namasli con Alessandra Viviani sempre, Benedetta Basso con Paolo Venturi, Angela Salvaggio con Gianni Silei, Rafacidomo con Gianni Silei, poi Alice Simeunovic con Francesco Francioni, Rebecca Storchi con te Sabrina e Muzzirali con Gianni Silei. Questi sono l'elenco, diciamo, dei candidati. Ora mando un messaggio a Alessandra.
Ecco, così semmai cominciamo e poi quando arriva si torna indietro, se ha un problema dopo.
Alessandra. Mandato.
Alessandra è entrata, quindi...
Perfetto.
Sì, scusatemi, ero a dare l'avvio alla lezione perché nel contemporanea c'è anche un'altra lezione.
Scusate, sono le 15.03, capisci che...
No,
hai il dono dell'ubiquità, è una gran cosa.
No, ragazzi, veramente questa cosa dell'online ha prodotto dei risultati fantastici, si riesce a essere in più posti contemporaneamente. Vabbè.
Allora, giusto per informare gli altri membri della commissione, se tutti siete d'accordo, con gli studenti ci saremmo accordati siccome tutti vorrebbero la registrazione della seduta, per fare un'unica registrazione, perché se no è tutto un avvia la registrazione, spinge la registrazione, avvia la registrazione, quindi fare un'unica registrazione della seduta e fare anche un'unica registrazione delle proclamazioni, se però ovviamente siete tutti d'accordo.
D'accordo. Va bene, per me va bene.
D'accordo, certo.
Perfetto. Ottimo così. La
Va
professoressa
bene anche per me, Andrea.
Ottimo. Alla professoressa Golob non gliel'ho chiesto, però insomma, siete d'accordo. Allora io, se siete d'accordo, avvio la registrazione. Iniziamo. Registro il mio. Registrazione avviata e quindi possiamo iniziare con questa seduta di laurea, seduta di laurea del Dipartimento di Scienze Politiche Internazionali. Dunque, buon pomeriggio a tutti. Ovviamente, in prima battuta, abbiamo 8 candidati, se non vado errato. Il primo candidato della lista è Lorenzo Laruina.
Buonasera.
Lorenzo Laruina, che presenta una tesi in diritto internazionale, una tesi di laurea triennale in scienze politiche. Il titolo della tesi è La libera manifestazione del pensiero tra sistema europeo e ordinamento italiano. La relatrice è la professoressa Alessandra Viviani, che ha la parola.
Allora, per quanto riguarda
Lorenzo, aspetti un momento, devo presentare io. Aspetti un attimo. Come stava iniziando a dire il signor Laruina, la tesi analizza un tema abbastanza classico, direi, del diritto internazionale dei diritti umani, che è quello della tutela della libertà d'espressione, in particolare le questioni legate alla libertà di stampa, e lo fa analizzando da una parte alcune decisioni della Corte europea dei diritti dell'uomo e dall'altra confrontando con quello che è l'ordinamento, diciamo, giuridico italiano, nei 3 capitoli in cui appunto è strutturata la sua tesi. Allora io chiederei appunto, scusate, al candidato di illustrare alla Commissione i risultati del suo lavoro. Prego, Lorenzo.
Ringrazio. All'interno del mio elaborato di tesi, diciamo che per l'appunto ho tenuto ad evidenziare qual è lo stato di salute della libertà di stampa nel mondo. In maniera particolare sono partito rispetto a quanto è stato rilevato da parte del World Press Index, il quale purtroppo ha sin da subito rilevato numerose criticità anche in seguito al periodo emergenziale che stiamo vivendo, in seguito all'emergenza sanitaria globale. E per l'appunto sono state evidenziate in maniera particolare 5 aree sensibili: l'area geopolitica, l'area tecnologica, l'area di fiducia, l'area democratica e l'area economica. Per quanto riguarda l'area geopolitica, con particolare riferimento alle pressioni esercitate da parte di alcuni regimi autoritari, quale molte volte si trovano ad apporre dei bavagli alla libertà di espressione dei giornalisti e per il tramite dell'ipercontrollo informativo. Invece per quanto riguarda l'area tecnologica, in quanto purtroppo non esiste un ordinamento univoco che si ponga in maniera chiara a tutela dell'informazione digitalizzata, e per quanto riguarda inoltre l'ambito democratico, in quanto molte volte il fatto che i soggetti non si fidano delle informazioni loro fornite perché pensano che le stesse possano essere in un certo qual senso manipolate o edulcorate, porta gli stessi a non fidarsi riguardo alle informazioni loro fornite, e questo può ripercuotersi anche in aggressioni verbali e fisiche nei confronti dei professionisti dei media. E infine, per quanto riguarda l'ambito economico, è il fatto che è stato subito un duro colpo da parte del giornalismo cartaceo anche in seguito dell'evoluzione dell'informazione digitalizzata. Questo ha potuto portare purtroppo a delle ripercussioni anche per quanto riguarda la qualità dell'informazione fornita dalle stesse. E in maniera particolare possiamo citare alcuni casi molto importanti di ipercontrollo informativo, come quelli posti in essere da parte della Cina oppure da parte dell'Iran, i quali hanno ampiamente censurato i primi focolai, oppure riferendoci ad un caso europeo possiamo citare quello dell'Ungheria, in cui è stata approvata per l'appunto una legge emergenziale attraverso la quale si permetteva al presidente Viktor Orban di emanare dei decreti che fossero direttamente esecutivi e quindi permetteva allo stesso di bypassare il Parlamento. Come titolo giustificativo è stato dichiarato che questa legge emergenziale avrebbe permesso una migliore gestione della situazione, ma inoltre all'interno di questa legge era stato previsto che sarebbero state accettate informazioni per quanto riguardava la pandemia che provenivano unicamente da fonti accreditate e che quindi qualora ci fosse stata la diffusione di informazioni che sarebbero state a detta degli organi di controllo false, quindi qualora ci fosse stata la diffusione di fake news, il giornalista avrebbe potuto rischiare una pena detentiva fino ad un massimo di 5 anni. Ed è proprio all'interno di questo contesto che si inserisce l'importante tutela apportata da parte dell'articolo 10 della Convenzione Europea per la salvaguardia dei diritti dell'uomo e delle libertà fondamentali, quindi della CEDU, quale sancisce che per l'appunto la libertà di espressione è un diritto individuale e che il soggetto ha diritto a non essere molestato per le proprie idee, ha il diritto di ricercare, ricevere e diffondere le informazioni per il tramite dei mezzi a sua disposizione senza alcun limite di frontiera. E diciamo che all'interno di del contesto di questa importante tutela apportata da parte della CEDU che si inserisce una sentenza emanata da parte dei giudici interni, quindi da parte delle corti italiane, in maniera particolare col riferimento al caso Magosso-Brindani. Caso Magosso-Brindani che per l'appunto ha portato i giudici interni ad emanare una sentenza di condanna per diffamazione a mezzo stampa nei confronti del giornalista Renzo Magosso e per omesso controllo per il suo direttore editoriale Umberto Brindani. In maniera particolare questa sentenza riguarda un articolo pubblicato su un importante settimanale italiano, quale narrava importanti fatti di cronaca relativi all'uccisione del giornalista Walter Tobagi ad opera di un gruppo terroristico di estrema sinistra. Però per l'appunto l'articolo pubblicato si baserà su delle dichiarazioni rese da parte di un allora brigadiere dell'Arma dei Carabinieri, il quale affermerà che lo stesso aveva fornito in un rapporto anonimo persino i nomi dei possibili esecutori dell'attentato alla vita del giornalista e che quindi lo stesso riteneva che in un certo qual senso ci fosse stata una sorta di inerzia dolosa da parte dei 2 generali dell'Arma dei Carabinieri perché tale rapporto era stato trasmesso a 2 suoi superiori. E per l'appunto questo porterà i giudici interni ad emanare una sentenza di condanna perché si riteneva che il giornalista avesse fatto da cassa di risonanza ad una versione diffamatoria dei fatti e che quindi per l'appunto lo stesso non si fosse preoccupato di verificare e controllare in maniera adeguata le informazioni riferite e che quindi avesse aderito acriticamente all'inerzia dolosa dei 2 generali. E inoltre, secondo le corti interne, mancava inoltre il secondo pilastro fondamentale del diritto di cronaca, che è rappresentato dalla continenza formale nella scelta dello stile espositivo, perché si riteneva che il giornalista avesse adottato un tono scandalistico e lontano dall'essere, era lontano dall'essere oggettivo. E invece diciamo che questa sentenza, in seguito all'emanazione di questa sentenza e quindi una volta esperiti i gradi di giudizio interni, i soggetti decideranno di far ricorso alla Corte di Strasburgo e per l'appunto la Corte di Strasburgo partirà rivalutando i 3 esimenti del diritto di cronaca, rappresentati per l'appunto dal criterio della pertinenza della notizia, della continenza formale nella scelta dello stile espositivo e della verità quantomeno putativa dei fatti riportati. E per quanto riguardava il primo criterio, la notizia, a detto dei giudici internazionali, risultava essere di un indubitabile interesse pubblico e quindi il primo requisito risultava essere pienamente soddisfatto. Per quanto riguarda il requisito invece della verità putativa, la Corte di Strasburgo rivaluterà alcuni elementi probatori apportati in sede processuale e in maniera particolare alcune note di servizio che erano state rese da parte del brigadiere e quali erano state considerate da parte delle corti interne come irrisorie in quanto non erano state accompagnate da sufficiente documentazione. Però all'interno di queste note di servizio erano presenti effettivamente alcuni dei nomi dei possibili esecutori dell'attentato alla vita del giornalista e questo aveva permesso sin da subito di indirizzare le indagini in un momento subito successivo nei confronti di uno dei soggetti delineati dall'allora brigadiere e quindi questo a detta della Corte Europea dei diritti dell'uomo avrebbe dovuto portare le corti interne a ritenere soddisfatto l'onere di verifica riguardo il fondamento della veridicità dei fatti. E infine, per l'appunto, la Corte di Strasburgo si esprimerà su quella che è stata la sanzione combinata al giornalista e al suo direttore editoriale, quale sarà ritenuta sproporzionata e di carattere penale punitivo, in quanto era stata combinata una sanzione per un ammontare totale di 153.000 euro a titolo di multa e di risarcimento del danno e dovuti anche per spese processuali. E quindi questo, a detto della Corte, risultava essere un forte deterrente dall'esercizio della libera manifestazione del pensiero, e per questo motivo diciamo che la Corte di Strasburgo ha ribaltato totalmente la sentenza emanata da parte del diritto interno. E da qui, per l'appunto, possiamo arrivare ad un nodo cruciale, che è quello della mancata armonizzazione molte volte tra l'ordinamento interno e l'ordinamento internazionale, che porta i giudici interni e i giudici internazionali a seguire degli stili argomentativi differenti. E in seguito a ciò, per l'appunto, i giudici interni si trovano in molte circostanze a dover interpretare quelle che sono gli stili argomentativi adottati dalla parte della Corte di Strasburgo, e quindi porta i giudici interni a dover esercitare un certo margine di discrezionalità. Ed è proprio in seguito a ciò che, per l'appunto, molte volte vi è anche un'incertezza riguardo quello che potrebbe essere l'esito di una vicenda processuale, e questo, per l'appunto, potrebbe essere un forte deterrente dall'esercizio della libera manifestazione del pensiero, anche in vista del fatto che vi è la necessità di garantire il principio della certezza del diritto, e che quindi il soggetto comunque deve sapere qual è lo spazio di tutela all'interno del quale lo stesso può muoversi senza incorrere in una violazione della legge.
Grazie signor Laurea, per me può bastare.
Bene, ci sono altre domande, altri interventi da parte dei commissari? Se non ci sono altre domande, noi ringraziamo Lorenzo, ovviamente ringraziamo
Grazie a voi.
Preghiamo Lorenzo, ovviamente, se vuole, può rimanere in questa stanza virtuale, e passiamo al secondo candidato della seduta. Dunque, secondo candidato, eccoci qua, scusate, c'è un po' di lentezza nei collegamenti. Jamila Namazli, or Namazli, are you there? Yeah.
Hello, dear all, and thank you for providing to study University of Siena, like international students like me from Azerbaijan. And I'm grateful for my professor, Sabrina Cavototo, my supervisor, Alessandra Viviani, and Selei for teaching me and give me opportunity to study University of Siena. So I'm Jamila Namazli, studying master degree, political and international sciences.
Sorry, Jamila. Let me introduce you and your thesis. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Then I give you the floor.
Thank you.
Jamila has submitted a thesis in European human rights protection. The title is Sustainable Development Goals and Trading. I guess this is the title. And the supervisor is Professor Alessandra Viviani, and the co-supervisor is
You.
It's me. Oh, yeah, it's me. Sorry. It's me. Okay, Alessandra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. The thesis submitted by the candidate concerns a topic which is becoming more and more relevant, and is the relationship existing between the principle of sustainable development in international law and a number of international law rules concerning trade. And in particular, whether or not the trading system is capable of adjusting and leaving, let's say, enough space to the principle of sustainable development. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Jamila, to the candidate, to explain the Commission the results of her research. Please, Jamila.
Thank you so much, Professor. My thesis consists of the agenda of sustainable development and the trading. I'm trying to share a screen in my PowerPoint.
I know that you can.
I'm
tried.
I'm sorry for technical problem. Did I? No, I couldn't. I don't know why. Share. No.
Don't worry, Jamila. If it doesn't work, it's not a problem. You can describe us the PowerPoint.
Okay, Professor. I would like to initially briefly information about the project. This is an old project. It burns in 1972 Brundtland Commission by the United Nations, but in 2015 it burns again. Of September 2015, United Nations headquarters in the New York General Assembly and its member state adopted the agenda sustainable development for the next 15 years. While I was searching my thesis, I understand once again it will be impossible to implement sustainable development goal without the support of international law, because United Nations is a huge international organization in the world, and they have a headquarters and a different kind of the bodies. And my thesis consists of the discuss international law, international diplomacy, and international trade law. I would like to give briefly information about the international law from point of the view of Jeremy Bentham, because he has a important role in international definition of the international law. He described international law is a collection of ruler governing relations between the state and United Nations, one of the huge international organization in the world, and it has a right adopt the draft international law, discretion and support member state initiate and adaptation of implementation of international law. International law is one of the body international trade law, and World Trade Organization here playing a main crucial role to make a focus trade law, international trade, and United Nations, because it is making the link between and make a policy and manage to trading and calculation budget, United Nations and other economic organization. And international trade law is very much a leading player in trying to achieve global growth and sustainability, develop the country. That's all about the World Trade Organization and the Doha round. It's plays an important role in my thesis, because Doha round give more opportunity to establish trading, international trade. It happens. It held in Qatar 2001, and with a member state of the Doha round should encircle agriculture, market access, service ruler, intellectual property, trade facilitation, trade environmental, special different treatment. A main reason of the holding aim at the reducing final support, developed nation, agriculture, domain, and export for developing countries. Doha round open new opportunity for developing countries services sector, while future modernizing existing emerging market. To this end, the Doha round of the World Trade Organization was very important of the both developed and developing countries. Increase economic growth, developing country, reduce a barrier to trade growth, that were defined fair trade, rural and developing countries. One of the most important conference it held in Paris conference in 4th November 2016. Why this Paris conference playing international important role in United United Nations and Sustainable Development Goals, because as we know nowadays, we are one of the major worldwide challenges globally is climate change. Due to the recent Paris conference was one of the main meetings of sustainable development history, because of member states had to negotiate to reduce, eliminate barriers, trade and environment, and general trade tariff rate, especially Article 20. B and G playing important role environmental and make a link between United Nations program with a sustainability. The general agreement implemented by World Trade Organization and paragraph B and G of Article 20. This agreement provides security of international markets and natural resources. These two exceptions that are most applicable on trade-related environmental policy are set out in point B and G and Article 20, which are the following the measure necessary to protect human, animal, planet, life, and health, relating to the conservation of exhaustible natural resources, if such a measure are made effective in conjunction with restriction on domestic production and consumption. And as we know, the high tariff does not always useful strategy to grow economy and economy of country. It is undeniable fact that sometimes it gives a negative effect also, such as a poor country. If the tariff rate is very high, the poor country is struggling, nutrition, they're up to face with other difficult situation. For that reason, it happens very unforgettable situation in Africa. The FRAIR tariff applied to the mosquito net 2011. As a result, it killed approximately 1,000 billion children because of the tariff rate. And that is why economists call the situation mortality and killer tariff. In order to increase economic income at the local level, the first priority states is to make a change in the taxes system. This policy is met positively in many countries and negatively in many. But in many cases, government foraging policy could be used to increase government revenue. For example, they give us 3 important points to reduce taxation and make inequality. First of all, imposing on important goods and services, it is called the tariff revenue. And the second one, taxation of exported goods and services, it is called export tax. And the third one, requiring a certain revenue from the export of the good. They are decided if this taxation process will be good, very successful, we can reduce the tariff rate and make a better economic country, and it helps to develop. These trade-related taxes can have a significant impact on the income flow, and in this case, it's necessary to regulate the situation such as a way that the amount of taxes does not harm the economy. The other way, the problem caused by high taxes and mosquito in Zambia, we observe in other countries. There is another 6 important recommendation of the change trade policy. We are now looking at opportunities and obstacles on national level in terms of shaping business access requirement to achieve a sustainable growth objective. Trade policy requires the law and regulation of the government to be set up to regulate transaction across access and the national borders. Experience post in 1980 indicates the autonomous policy and pushing economic growth. However, the Sustainable Development Goal and 2030 Agenda contain the non-tariff obstacles and limits on the trade services. Sustainable Development Goals have a number of recommendations referring to the sustainability classes in their policy and the trade-related cases. There is a second number of the second goal, the rising limit trading international food market and Hungary. It helps to this end. Also, subsidies applied to agriculture export should be eliminated in parallel, and equal benefit should be created for export products. And the goal 8, decent work as economic growth, provide the trade support at the local level, developing countries, especially in a context of a changing integrated framework, technical assistance related to the trade. Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Organize the development, reliable, sustainable, small-scale industrial and other enterprises in a developing country, especially in the border area, including regional and infrastructure. Goal 10, reduce inequality. According to the agreement of the World Trade Organization, it is necessary to eliminate a special inequality for developing country. According to the Shepherd, he argues that if we trade policy implemented, it will be improved trade logistics, facilitate trade, increase the health impact of the trade, regulate growth through other channels, income and the productivity, and prevent and increase the number of children vaccinated against the certain disaster. Trade policy must focus on reducing base against the poorer, providing the trading support, household and farmers. Removing barrier to trade is electricity and energy transport, giving the new opportunity for the new firm and enter the market access for each region and the farmer. There is a potential link between trade and sustainable development. Trade is one of the necessary factors in economic development. Trade creates employment opportunity. People in the first place bring income, reduce industrial and consumer costs, encourage businessmen.
Sorry, Jamila, if you can just come to the conclusions, please.
Okay. There is a 3 and 4 most important general trade and tariff rates, Article 70.12, 70.11, 70.7. They are make an agreement between the member state to reduce the tariff, and it works. And at least the key goal was to improve means of computing and value in the global alliance and sustainable growth. And 17.11 article aims to overcome obstacles that prevent local development from gaining the entry market. That's it. I'm sorry I couldn't share my PowerPoint because of technical problem. Thank you so much.
Don't worry, it's not a problem.
Don't worry, Jamila. I have just a short question. At the end of your thesis, you put an annex, Annex 1, the Juncker Commission's contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. And what do you think about this contribution? And is it a positive contribution? Should the European Union do more?
While I was searching the goals of the sustainability and the European Commission consideration, unfortunately, European Commission worried about this goal couldn't be realized because of the short time, and it requires approximately $5 and $7 trillion. It's a huge project. And this is responsibility not only the shoulder of the government, not only shoulder the European Commission, Parliament member and countries. As a citizens, the social community also has to support to realize these goals because of trade, because of environmental problems, because of education. There is several problems on this issue, but they are doing, they are working in hard, and they have a lot of declaration, memorandum, article which is existed to solve this problem.
Okay, Jamila. Okay, Jamila, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Jamila. You're invited to stay here if you want. And now we skip to the third candidate. Alessandra, se hai impegni e ti devi assentare, a questo punto credo...
No, sono ancora nella prossima tesi come correlatrice, quindi resto.
Vedete, Presidente Francioni. Allora, torno alla seduta e eccoci qua. Benedetta Basso.
Buonasera.
Buonasera Benedetta. Benedetta Basso presenta una tesi, apro la sua pagina, una tesi in diritto internazionale privato e processuale. Il titolo è Sul forum necessitatis, un possibile equilibrio tra i limiti della giurisdizione civile e il diniego di giustizia. Il relatore è il professor Paolo Venturi, la correlatrice per l'appunto è la professoressa Alessandra Viviani. Paolo Venturi, professor Venturi, a lei la parola, a te la parola.
Ecco, non mi dare del lei perché sennò
Ora,
già siamo...
ero calato troppo nella...
Già stiamo invecchiando. Va bene, no, grazie mille Presidente, la ringrazio.
You're welcome.
Ovviamente già il titolo della tesi evidenzia che l'argomento prescelto tenta di dare una valutazione ad un concetto che sta emergendo nelle dinamiche dei singoli ordinamenti nazionali nell'ottica del diritto internazionale privato e processuale, in particolare sul tema della competenza giurisdizionale, in situazioni molto particolari. Attraverso questo concetto, cioè si sta affermando, e sta avvenendo anche in modo molto lento, direi anche poco formalizzato, attraverso la prassi della Corte di Cassazione italiana, anche nel nostro ordinamento, un modello di diritto internazionale privato sulla competenza giurisdizionale che sembra sempre più aspirare a creare degli strumenti di equilibrio tra i normali limiti della competenza giurisdizionale su questioni civili proprio di ogni sistema giuridico e giudiziario e il problema del diniego di giustizia. Questo diventa particolarmente rilevante quando il diniego di giustizia si riverbera in particolare nella tutela di diritti umani fondamentali, e qui ci sono pagine anche del mio maestro, per esempio, dedicate al tema dell'accesso alla giustizia e della rilevanza che questo può avere ormai oggi nel contesto della tutela dei diritti umani fondamentali. Alessandra e Federico conoscono meglio di me questo argomento. Dall'altra parte, con il forum necessitatis si tenta di costruire uno strumento diverso, alternativo al concetto di giurisdizione civile universale, che in realtà appunto al di là di qualche posizione più progressista in relazione ai diritti umani fondamentali non si è mai affermato poi effettivamente nell'ordinamento internazionale e quindi conseguentemente negli ordinamenti nazionali. Ecco, la tesi, che si compone di 3 capitoli, tenta di dare inizialmente una configurazione a questo concetto di forum necessitatis, trattandolo dal punto di vista generale, concettuale, astratto, come si inquadra cioè nell'ambito della disciplina della competenza giurisdizionale, e affiancandolo, perché ve ne sono alcuni elementi di affinità, con concetti di forum convenience o forum non convenience che sono più familiari ai sistemi di common law, mentre il forum necessitatis si sta sviluppando nei sistemi di civil law in particolare. E poi affronta questo tema nel secondo capitolo in relazione ai diritti umani fondamentali, in relazione ad una prassi della Corte europea dei diritti dell'uomo, che si è in qualche modo occupata di questa vicenda, dando una soluzione magari non prettamente, diciamo, coerente alle ambizioni o alle aspirazioni che mi sembra anche la signora Basso, oratoressa Basso, dovrebbe alla fine poi affermare. Però è interessante come anche la Corte europea dei diritti dell'uomo si sta, come dire, sta valutando, no, della possibile combinazione in relazione soprattutto all'articolo 6 e questo meccanismo che è tipicamente di diritto internazionale di privato processuale, cioè non ha logiche necessariamente legate alla tutela dei diritti umani. E infine, l'ultimo capitolo, un tentativo che parte da 2 sentenze della Corte di Cassazione distanti dall'altra quasi 10 anni, per vicende molto particolari legate alla tutela dei lavoratori subordinati, attraverso le quali la Corte tenta di, diciamo anche inconsapevolmente, perché lo fa in modo molto, molto astratto e molto disarticolato, di affermare comunque l'esistenza anche nell'ordinamento italiano di un sistema che tutela o deve tutelare in ogni caso situazioni in cui altrimenti vi sarebbe un diniego di giustizia. Ho fatto una premessa abbastanza ampia perché meritava questo argomento, questa, diciamo, articolazione, perché poi la signora Basso non avrà modo di affrontare tutti questi argomenti. Infatti io le chiederei intanto di focalizzarsi sul tema del forum necessitati, cioè di caratterizzarlo, di farci capire che cosa è nell'ordinamento, diciamo, nel diritto internazionale privato, proprio attraverso questa affinità e distinzione con il forum convenience o forum non convenience.
Sì.
Prego.
Come ha detto lei, prima di tutto inquadriamo un attimo il forum necessitatis, in quanto il forum necessitatis rappresenta un criterio di giurisdizione di natura eccezionale nel momento in cui è impossibile identificare il giudice competente. I presupposti per istituire il forum necessitatis sono principalmente la cittadinanza, la residenza o il domicilio di una delle parti, o addirittura legami più labili, e questi legami sono bisogna cercare questi legami al fine di evitare appunto un diniego di giustizia. All'impossibilità derivante da motivi di diritto va equiparata l'impraticabilità di fatto del giudice dettato da eventi occasionali o dai criteri dell'ordinamento in questione. Quindi, al fine di affermare la giurisdizione del forum necessitatis, è indispensabile che vi sia un collegamento sufficiente tra la fattispecie in oggetto e l'ordinamento in questione. Il forum necessitatis, quindi, possiamo dire che comporta una deroga del principio di prossimità, dato che la giurisdizione viene attribuita ad un giudice che sarà lontano dalla controversia. Nel territorio dell'Unione Europea il forum necessitatis non è applicato in maniera omogenea, poiché solo in 6 stati il forum necessitatis è applicato attraverso disposizioni di legge, invece in 4 è applicato sulla base della giurisprudenza. Attualmente, come accennava il professor Venturi, negli altri 17 non è ancora applicato senza nessun criterio di giurisdizione. Quindi nei paesi di civil law abbiamo detto che il forum necessitatis è rappresentato in maniera eccezionale, a differenza dei paesi di common law, dove riscontriamo una maggiore discrezionalità per il giudice. Questo appunto è dettato dalla figura del forum convenience o del forum non convenience, in quanto convenience è utilizzato come termine per identificare l'appropriatezza del foro. Infatti, attraverso questo meccanismo, il giudice ha la possibilità di dichiarare la sua incompetenza e indicare il foro più competente. Presupposto però essenziale è che il giudice si accerti che il foro da lui indicato sia disponibile ad accettare la controversia. Infatti, in una situazione di questo genere possiamo dire che comunque i presupposti celati dietro il forum necessitatis sono più o meno rappresentati dal forum convenience. Infatti entrambe hanno come scopo l'evitare il diniego di giustizia, però il forum necessitatis si distingue nettamente dal forum convenience semplicemente per la sua natura sussidiaria, proprio perché attraverso il forum necessitatis si dà diritto alla vittima nel momento in cui nessun ordinamento è competente. L'unico regolamento in cui troviamo in maniera espressa il forum necessitatis è il regolamento CE 4 2009 nell'articolo 4, quando invece il regolamento 1215 del 2012 fa cenno al forum necessitatis attraverso il suo articolo 5. Possiamo comunque parlare, anzi dobbiamo parlare soprattutto dei lavori preparatori che hanno portato il regolamento 44/2001 al regolamento 1215, ma non perché il regolamento 44 non andasse bene, ma perché si era arrivato a un punto in cui c'era la necessità di avere una libera circolazione delle decisioni giudiziarie e soprattutto il regolamento 44 dava luogo ad alcune lacune, tra cui ci era la necessità di migliorare la possibilità di scegliere il foro. Infatti nei lavori preparatori si prevede che i giudici di uno Stato membro saranno competenti nel momento in cui vi è un collegamento sufficiente tra la controversia e il foro in questione. Come si fa a decidere se il foro non è competente? Attraverso il rispetto dei requisiti elencati dall'articolo 2 all'articolo 24 di detto regolamento. E quindi nel momento in cui attraverso questi requisiti non si riscontra la competenza del foro, bisognerà trovare un collegamento sufficiente che siano anche i beni del convenuto presenti nel territorio. Per quanto riguarda...
Senta, però mi scusi, la interrompo un attimo, concentriamoci però sul forum necessitatis. No? Il riferimento ai lavori preparatori è importante perché già nei lavori preparatori, cioè di riforma del regolamento 44 verso il 1215, si introdusse una seria analisi della possibilità di valutare forum convenience e anche il forum necessitatis, no? Che poi non ha avuto seguito.
No, infatti la Corte non ha mai, non si è mai espressa sul forum convenience, semplicemente perché comunque è un meccanismo, diciamo, di giurisdizione ristretto negli istituti di common law e soprattutto tuttora si fa comunque abbastanza confusione fra i due meccanismi, semplicemente perché all'apparenza possono sembrare simili, anche perché, come dicevo all'inizio, al momento non è accettato da tutti gli Stati membri la possibilità di utilizzare la giurisdizione sulla base del forum necessitatis.
Anche se il forum necessitatis prescinde dalla valutazione della convenienza, ma si concentra più sul tema della risoluzione del diniego della giustizia, mentre il forum convenience, come giustamente ci diceva, parte proprio... è un concetto di approccio generale all'applicabilità della competenza giurisdizionale. Per me può bastare. Alessandra, non so se vuoi fare... Posso, scusi Presidente, mi sono permesso.
Sì, grazie Paolo. Io appunto si faceva riferimento nella presentazione al tema o al collegamento che può esistere fra quest'idea del forum necessitatis e l'accesso alla giustizia da parte di una vittima di violazione dei diritti umani. E volevo capire un po' se in che misura questo sembra essere possibile e come la Corte europea si è pronunciata in tal senso.
In tal riguardo io inizierei con un esempio, semplicemente per comprendere meglio come la Corte dei diritti umani si è comportata in questa condizione. Allora, la sentenza in oggetto è la sentenza resa il 15 marzo del 2018 Nate Lehman contro Svizzera, in quanto è la prima volta che la Corte Edu prende in esame la questione relativa all'esistenza di un obbligo da parte degli Stati nell'applicare il criterio della giurisdizione universale in materia civile ed è la prima volta in cui la Corte Edu accetta l'esistenza di una giurisdizione sulla base del forum necessitatis, ma al contempo comunque ne sottolinea il mancato obbligo. In questo caso il signor Nate Lehman è di cittadinanza tunisina e nel 1992 dichiara di essere stato torturato su mandato del ministro degli affari interni tunisino dopo la sua consegna della polizia italiana al consolato tunisino a Genova. Nel 1993 arriva in Svizzera e nel 1995 ottiene lo status di rifugiato e quindi di asilo politico. Nel 2001 il suo presunto torturatore viene ricoverato in territorio elvetico e quindi lui decide di denunciarlo penalmente, ma nessuno accoglie la sua denuncia. Al che nel 2004 decide di adire in materia civile e nel 2007 il Tribunale federale svizzero dichiara la sua non giurisdizione su base del forum necessitatis. Dato che nello stesso anno il signor Nate Lehman riesce ad ottenere la cittadinanza elvetica, decide di rivolgersi alla Corte EDU appunto sulla base dell'articolo 6 della CEDU e quindi sulla base del diritto all'equo processo. In questo caso la Corte EDU ammette che la comprensione dei tribunali svizzeri del forum necessitatis sia ristretta, dato che appunto, come dicevo, non è sviluppato in tutti gli stati dell'Unione Europea e soprattutto bisogna che ci sia un collegamento sufficiente. Inoltre la Corte EDU aggiunge che sulla base dell'articolo 14 della Convenzione della Convenzione contro gli atti di tortura, il signor Nate Lehman avrebbe potuto avere un risarcimento per i danni subiti nel momento in cui si era accertato che l'articolo 14 avesse competenza extraterritoriale, ma dato che tale articolo è abbastanza ambiguo su questa materia, non c'è nessuna sussistenza al riguardo. In via preliminare la Corte EDU ammette l'esistenza dell'applicazione del primo comma dell'articolo 6, in quanto comunque la controversia è reale e seria e soprattutto il ricorrente sarebbe potuto... il diritto fatto valere al ricorrente si sarebbe potuto riconoscere attraverso l'ordinamento giuridico svizzero. Tuttavia, alla fine, la Corte EDU dichiara che il forum necessitatis da parte della Corte svizzera era compreso in maniera ristretta, però al contempo non dichiara dichiara la non violazione dell'articolo 6 della CEDU per il rispetto degli obiettivi della buona amministrazione, tutto per l'effettività delle decisioni giudiziarie interne. Attraverso questa decisione della Corte EDU la dottrina si divide perché nel momento in cui non vi è obbligo di applicare tale giurisdizione non vuol dire che comunque non si possa applicare per rispettare i diritti umani. Infatti nel 2012 l'International Law Association attraverso le sue linee guida redige una relazione per i casi di violazione civile contro i diritti umani e soprattutto nel paragrafo 2.3 possiamo leggere delle indicazioni specifiche per il forum necessitatis, dove appunto sancisce che affinché si possa applicare il forum necessitatis bisogna che non vi sia nessun foro competente, che vi sia il rischio di un diniego di giustizia, sia se non vi è nessun foro competente, sia se il convenuto non può raggiungere il foro e soprattutto che vi sia un collegamento sufficiente dettato da motivi fisici che siano la residenza, il domicilio, la cittadinanza o la presenza dei beni o una rivendicazione civile basata su un atto che ha dato luogo ad un procedimento penale in detto foro. Quindi sulla base di queste linee guida la Svizzera sarebbe potuta essere il forum necessitatis e quindi avrebbe potuto avere giurisdizione in questa sentenza. Inoltre anche l'Italia, dato che il signor Nate Lehman si trovava in Italia, sarebbe potuta essere anche il forum necessitatis e quindi avrebbe potuto avere giurisdizione in tal senso. Di contro nel 2015 l'Istituto di Diritto Internazionale redige una sua risoluzione nel momento in cui e sancisce che secondo loro la giurisdizione universale in materia civile dovrebbe essere obbligatoria in base sussidiaria. Prima di continuare però bisogna comunque distinguere nettamente il forum necessitatis dalla giurisdizione universale civile, perché il forum necessitatis è azionato solo in presenza di un collegamento sufficiente fra la causa e lo Stato e quindi si risolve in una forma di giurisdizione civile ordinaria però, al fine di evitare appunto un diniego di giustizia. Invece la giurisdizione universale si attua in assenza di ogni collegamento razione loci o razione persone. Questa
per me può bastare, Benedetta, grazie.
Può bastare, sì, grazie.
Grazie a Benedetta Basso,
grazie a voi.
Sandra Viviani e Paolo Venturi. Dunque, seguendo l'ordine, noi dovremmo discutere la tesi di Angela Salvaggio. Però non vedo ancora collegata la professoressa Golob, che d'altra parte ha detto che sarebbe collegata attorno alle 16. Quindi se siete d'accordo, e considerando che i tempi di discussione sono quelli soliti, insomma un quarto d'ora, 20 minuti, potremmo anticipare il candidato successivo e poi facciamo, appena si connette la professoressa Golob, facciamo Angela Salvaggio. E così. Dunque, Piera Faccidomo. Se è pronta, la anticipiamo.
Sì?
Piera, ci sei?
Sì, eccomi.
Perfetto. Spero che il cambio di programma non ti abbia destabilizzato.
No, solo un momento che chiudo le cose necessarie e ci sono.
Perfetto.
Guarda dentro che lo dici. Scusate.
Scusa Piera, in inglese o in italiano?
È in inglese.
In inglese, perfetto. So, now we are going to discuss the thesis submitted by Piera Faccidomo, the title of which is Nagorno-Karabakh, the Unresolved Ethnic, Economic and Political Conflict. The supervisor is Professor Gianni Silei. The co-supervisor is Professor Federico Lenzerini. Professor Silei, you have the floor.
Thank you, Andrea. As we unfortunately know, the Nagorno-Karabakh represents one of the main crisis scenarios in the current new international and multipolar context. And in this thesis, Piera has tried to reconstruct the roots of this conflict, the roots of this crisis, its development, its consequences. So I would ask Piera to, in few words, to explain her research to the committee in general terms, structure, sources, main goals, and so on. And I would ask in particular, I'm interested in your third chapter, in which you have tried to analyze the role of the main international actors that are involved in this crisis. So, Piera, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. And I will give a general framework, and then I will focus my discussion on my speech on what has been required by Gianni Silei, my professor, my supervisor, and what has been previously required by the Professor Federico Lenzerini, which is my co-supervisor.
So I will start with the fact, with telling the story of Nagorno-Karabakh, which is a conflict, is an ethnic and territorial conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh. This is a place which is inhabited mostly by ethnic Armenians, and then there are 7 surrounding districts inhabited mostly by Azerbaijan until their expulsion that happened during the first Nagorno-Karabakh crisis. All these regions are de facto controlled by the self-declared Republic of Artsakh, but they are internationally recognized as the jure part of Azerbaijan. The conflict has its origin in the early 20th century, when the Armenians and the Muslim inhabitants of the Caucasus, in this case the Azeris, which were once called Caucasian Tartars, before 1918 had already been involved in numerous conflicts. Pogroms, massacres, and war solidified oppositional ethnic identities between the two groups, and have contributed to the development of national consciousness among the Azeris and the Armenians. From 1918 to 1920, organized killings of Armenians occurred in Azerbaijan, especially in the Armenian culture centers of Baku and Shusha, under the old Russian Empire. Due to these events, an anti-Armenian sentiment is widespread within Azerbaijan and Azerbaijani people. They perceive Armenians as a threat and the biggest enemy of Azerbaijan. Before this, another important and pivotal element is lacking. In fact, during 1915, the Ottoman Empire started a mass killing, massacres, and deportation of Armenians from Anatolia to the Syrian desert. They were perceived as dangerous because they were in favor of the Allies during the World War I, especially on the side of Russia. Around 1.5 million Armenians died during this period due to ill treatment, mass killings, exposures, or starvation. This also contributed to create the image of an enemy for everything that is linked to the Turkic world. In this regard, the Armenians during the last Karabakh war claimed that Turkey was willing to put an end to what started in 1915. Anyway, Turkey still refused to call it as a genocide, but as actions needed for security concerns during a wartime relocation. The current conflict, though, started in 1988, when the Karabakh Armenians demanded that Karabakh was to be transferred from the Soviet Azerbaijan to Soviet Armenia, and then even campaigned for total independence. Azerbaijan refused, and the conflict escalated into a full-scale war in the early 1990s, with the official starting point in 1992. A ceasefire was brokered in 1994, providing for 2 decades of relative stability, which significantly deteriorated along with Azerbaijani frustrations with the status quo ante. During this war, an important body was created, thanks to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. This body is the Minsk Group, and some of the states which are part of this group are, for example, the United States, Turkey, Russia, some European countries, namely also France, and some other member states which actually do not have any interest in this situation, have a neutral position. The Minsk Group, which has 3 permanent co-chairs, Russia, France, and the USA, had the objective to create a possible peaceful settlement of the conflict, has been reached by today. An important turning point were the Madrid Principles, which were updated in 2009, which called for a withdrawal of Armenian forces from the occupied territories and the determination of the final status of Nagorno-Karabakh through a legally binding expression of will, which can be a referendum. Notwithstanding the various meetings of both parties to the conflict, the Azeris and the Armenians have been solidly insisting on their position of territorial integrity and the right to self-determination. According to these last principles, the Armenians in the late 80s campaigned for independence based on the people's self-determination in concert with Article 70 of the former Soviet Union constitutions. From an international law point of view, the attention should be based on the term people and understand if Armenians fall under these categories or instead they are an ethnic minority. In both cases, to people and ethnic minorities, the fundamental rights are to be recognized according to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and they are a distinguished group of people due to ethnic, linguistic, and cultural features. Both people both people and ethnic minorities share these features, but people lack of their own nation state. Like in the case of Kurds, for example, it's a group of people in Turkey which lacks its own nation state. There is no widely accepted definition of minority groups under international law when it comes to self-determination, and it gives both an internal and external character, which give rise to a conflict with another core principle, that is the territorial sovereignty. On the other hand, Azerbaijan has always refused the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh, based exactly on the principle of territorial integrity that we find in Article 2 of the United Nations Charter, and is also recognized as a rule of customary international law, and it was also stated at the time on Article 78 of the former Soviet Union constitutions. The Security Council in the 90s also addressed different resolutions to the conflict, underlined that the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan had been various times violated. What gave hope to the Armenians was the Kosovo's declaration of independence in 2008. But even in this case, the International Court of Justice focused more on the legality of the declaration rather than on the right to self-determination and then the right to secede. Kosovo independence is in fact not internationally recognized by many states, including its mother state, which is Serbia. All things considered, and according to the existing law and practice, we can say that the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan seems to prevail to the external self-determination of the Karabakh region. According to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Declaration on Minorities, minority groups have the right to political participation in the region where they are located, and they have the right to exercise their cultural, linguistic, and ethnic religious right. The last armistice represents a big step to the restoration of its integrity to Azerbaijan with the return of its former territories, once occupied by Armenian forces, and the document also provides room for an internal self-determination of Armenians and economic cooperation among the two states. After this, we can say that sporadic fights and clashes have always taken place in the region, in the line of contact, especially between Armenia and Azeri forces in Nagorno-Karabakh, with a war escalating in 2016, which was called the Four-Day War. The number of deaths and casualties during this war is unknown, and the role of the international community was that to call an immediate truce and negotiations with the interests of Russia, the US, and Europe. When it seemed to be the end, continued skirmishes and accusations of detentions and killings of civilians were denounced from both parties. Especially we have the European Parliament and the US diplomats that are always calling for an end to these human rights violations. Following these hostilities, then, in September 2020, heavy fighting broke out along the border, where thousands of soldiers and civilians were killed. These times, the armament were modern, with drones, the use of long-range artillery, and other heavy weaponry. After more than 40 days of bloodshed, Russian President Vladimir Putin negotiated a ceasefire together with the Armenian and the Azeri presidents. The ceasefire, in force since the 9th of November 2020, changed the status quo ante with the restitution of the several former districts, which were once of Azeri majority, to Azerbaijan, and part of Karabakh proper, including the largest town of Shusha. The capital, Stepanakert, remained under Armenian administration despite the withdrawal of Armenian troops, mostly from the old occupied territories. And more important, the new peace deal involved the displacement of Russian peacekeepers contingent around the location to prevent another de-escalation of conflict. From the ceasefire, Azerbaijan seems to have won, but the actual victory was for Russia, which will keep its troops at least for 5 years in the region, with the possibility to renew the mandate. This period will be significant for the Russian ambitions to control the Caucasus, the oil and the gas reserves and pipelines present in the region. In the last years, even with the relationship between Moscow and the US at their lowest point since the Soviet dissolutions, American diplomats have positively assessed the role of the Russian leadership played in de-escalating the conflict, as the talks of the Minsk group were never listened to. What more, Russia Russia have lost its influence in many regions in the Caucasus, such as in Georgia. So even if it has always backed Armenia, it is interested in creating relationship with Azerbaijan. Moscow is in fact the major weaponry seller to Azerbaijan, which pay at full price, contrary to Armenia, which buy at a discount price according to the integration project between them. In this case, we can say that Russia is trying to do its job, being cautious to maintain neutral stances among Azerbaijan and Armenia. Another important player is Turkey, that is a bigger supporter of Azerbaijan and with which it started a blockade toward Armenians during the first Nagorno-Karabakh war. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Turkey saw an opportunity to reunite the Turkic people and bring regions under its leadership. Its aim was that to control the energy-rich countries of the Caspian region, in which it has close cultural ties. Despite the low relationship with Armenia due to the events of the 1915, Turkey maintains stronger relationship with Azerbaijan, especially the energy communication project. In fact, we have the Baku-Tbilisi-Seyhan oil pipeline and the Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline, including some railways. Its goal has been that of becoming a major Eurasian energy hub and has exercised its influence through the support of Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. However, over the last years, Turkey has been occupied in a series of foreign policy interventions, both in Syria and in Libya. And this has created the dynamic for cooperative competition among Russia and Turkey relationship. By backing, in fact, opposite sides in the conflict, they have the role to work then together to negotiate the resolutions. The Russian has also accepted to create together with Turkey a body to preserve peace in Nagorno-Karabakh, and Turkey also is deploying few of its peacekeeping troops. This cooperation seems convenient for Russia, which hopes that through this relationship with Turkey can weaken American and European position in Syria and Libya, and also weaken their interest in the Caucasus. Another player is Iran, which is located in an important route to transport the energy wealth of the Caspian Sea and Central Asia. However, it is frowned upon by the US because they consider Iranian militancy a danger equal to that of Russian interests. Even though Turkey and Iran cooperate over Syria and fight Kurdish separatists, Iran is concerned about the growing influence of Turkey, and especially its influence on one of its borders. Its contribution to the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh has been maintained despite its controversial relationship with Azerbaijan, which has often been accused of helping Israel to assassinate some Iranian nuclear scientists. Iran has argued that Tehran could have mediated a resolution more effectively than the Hashemite group. In reality, Iran's motivation for doing so is linked to the fact that it is averse to Washington's engagement in the South Caucasus. The November 2020 ceasefire deal showcased the Iranians' fragile role position in the geopolitics of the South Caucasus. In any case, it has supported Azerbaijan's claim to preserve its borders. Its position is also important because through its port and its railway development strategy, Iran can be an interconnector to India, China, and Russia, and this is important for the Azerbaijan energy resources. Last but not least, we have the European Union and the United States. They have played quite parallel roles in the conflict and in general in the region. Their major interests are the access to gas and oil reserves in the way that the West can diversify the world energy suppliers for their linked economic business. In addition, they have called the parties to the conflict for the respect of human rights, democracy, and anti-terrorism. The European Union have increasing economic interests in the region because it represents a lucrative and potentially attractive place for foreign direct investment, especially for multinational oil companies. At the same time, we have the United States, which, same as the European Union, has been financing the development of different projects, such as the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline that started in 2013 and was completed just last year, from Azerbaijan, transport gas throughout Albania, Greece, even Italy. The United States saw an opportunity to further the US supporting goal for a southern corridor, bringing new sources of gas to Europe, strengthening so global security. Azerbaijan is a greater supplier crude oil to the west, especially to Europe. And as a consequence, the maintenance of peaceful conditions in the Karabakh is at stake because it could badly influence the investors and increase oil prices in the global market. The Western democracy has also voiced concern over the possible use of the Armenian occupied territories of Azerbaijan in the drug trade. This has been just voiced, but some of these have been reported. And these drugs enter this territory from the border with Iran. They enter and they go toward Armenia, then Georgia, and then the Central Europe. Since the attack then in the US in 2001, the South Caucasian states have supported the American operations in Afghanistan. In particular, Azerbaijan has contributed troops for peacekeeping, and over the time has also doubled that. Also, Armenian is giving its lighter support, sending contingent to Iraq. The United States is one of the co-chairs of the Minsk group, and Washington knows that the security in the Caucasus is crucial for the economic interests, and that's why they have remained actively engaged in advancing a peaceful settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Cooperation with the other co-chairs has been excellent, and as all the other United Nations member states, it has never recognized Nagorno-Karabakh as an independent country. On the contrary, they have supported the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and hopes that the future status of Nagorno-Karabakh will be a matter of both states, which will in accordance achieve a lasting and comprehensive political resolution to the conflict. During the last Nagorno-Karabakh war, the attention in America was mostly focused on the elections. But in the US, there is a strong Armenian community which enjoy a strong position in the capital, and they are also lobbying for Armenians in the conflict. At the same time, the US is selling military hardware and weapons to Azerbaijan. The US is striving to maintain military and energy partnership with Azerbaijan because in the case in which Russia will gain control of the region, it will lose its strategic control of those lands. In the first decade of the 2000s, the US saw in Turkey a strategic partner in the South Caucasus to prevent Russia to take control of the region. But lately, their relations have not been a smooth ride. On this path, on April 24, 2020, the American President Joe Biden has formally recognized the mass killings of Armenia during the First World War by the Ottoman Empire as a genocide, a move that was soon rejected by the Turkish government, claiming that this act would harm the relationship between the NATO allies. To the Armenians, this was a long-awaited acknowledgement for an atrocity against...
Yes. Chiara, I'm sorry if I interrupt you. Yes. You have, in a very detailed way, analyzed what I asked you. For me, it's okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I am satisfied as well by the presentation.
Thank you, Piera.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you, Gianni, and thank you, Piera, for presenting your work, which such details, which is very interesting. So, any other questions? No. And now we can skip to Angela Salvaggio. Angela, are you there?
Yes, of course. I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Okay. Angela is there. And well, Professor Sile is there. And Professor Stephanie Golub is there, I guess.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. And Professor Golub, we thank you from the City University of New York, and we thank you so much for joining us, and most of all for being an active part in Angela's thesis research. So thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Angela Salvaggio has submitted a thesis in contemporary history, the title of which is The Democratic Crisis in the European Union and in Latin America, Hungary and Venezuela before and during COVID-19. The supervisor is Professor Gianni Silei, and the co-supervisor is Professor Stephanie Golub. Gianni, you have the floor.
Thank you, Andrea. And first of all, I'd like to thank so much Professor Stephanie Golub for accepting the role of co-supervisor and for the support and the advices she provided to Angela for research. Thank you. In short, in few words, the idea of this interesting and original research came after a period of study abroad that Angela was able to spend at the Baruch College in New York. And as we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has been an extremely tough test, not only for the United States of America, but at a global level, as we know. And also some of the measures that has been taken to try to deal with the emergency, it has been said at the beginning of this discussion by Lorenzo, has sparked a debate around many issues, and in particular around democracy. So the issue of safeguarding democracy has been studied in this thesis by Angela. And starting from these aspects, this thesis analyzes the impact of the pandemic by comparing, as Andrea said, two cases, Hungary and Venezuela, in relation to their respective, we could say, international reference organizations. The European Union from one hand and the Organization of American States on the other hand. I would ask Angela to explain to the committee her research and the conclusions she reached. Thank you, Angela. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Professor Sileim, Professor Golob, for your presentation. So, yes, as you anticipated, I chose the subject of my master thesis after my studying abroad, and I decided to focus my thesis on the democratic crisis in the European Union and Latin America before and during COVID-19, taking into consideration specifically two cases, Hungary and Venezuela. Hungary as a member of the European Union and Venezuela as a member of the Organization of American States. Why these two last organizations are failing in punishing two member states that evidently are violating fundamental principles, democratic principles established in basic treaties. So Hungary and Venezuela appear so far apart. They are very different in form of government, in institutions. They are located in different areas of the hemisphere, but we know that they have a common denominator. So the revival of illiberal and undemocratic form of government characterized by the executive of a reach since Maduro and Orban came to power, and even more so now during COVID-19, that represent a tool and excuse to strengthen the liberal democracy and to make worse the democratic form of government. So in taking advantages from bibliographical and institutional sources, I structured my thesis by imagining it as a Chinese box. So I would like to invite you to close your eyes and try to imagine my structure. So as a Chinese box, the biggest box is the global good governance backsliding around the world, inside which box there are two boxes. So the case of the European Union and the Organization of American States, the European Union democratic system and the Organization of American States democratic system. Inside each box, there is another box. That is the case, the member state. So for the European Union, Hungary, and for the Organization of American States, Venezuela. Inside the Hungarian box, there are two boxes. That is the violation of the rule of law and the migration crisis. The migration crisis for the Hungarian case is the immigration crisis, because we know very well that mainly since 1956, Hungary had a past of emigration and now is facing a present of immigration. For the Venezuelan box, inside the Venezuelan box, there are two boxes. So the violation of the rule of law, as for the Hungarian case, and the migration crisis. So the box of migration crisis for Venezuela is particularly called brain drain, because Venezuela now is facing the opposite situation, the opposite sides of the same coin. So Venezuela is facing the emigration crisis. So Venezuela had a past of immigration because of the rich economy, and now is facing the emigration crisis since 2014. So these letter boxes, so the violation of the rule of law and the migration crisis, are metaphorically wrapped by principles, regulations established in basic treaties. In order to analyze the violation of the rule of law in Hungary before and during COVID-19, I talk in analysis Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty. In order to analyze the violation of the rule of law in Venezuela, I analyzed deeply Article 20, 21, and 22 of the Inter-American Democratic Chapter. And in order to analyze and study the migration crisis for the Hungary and so the European Union, I analyzed the Dublin regulations. So I deeply described the process that gets implemented the Dublin regulation. And for the Venezuelan case, I analyzed the Cartagena Declaration. So now that I described the structure of the thesis that I mentioned, I deeply described the work. So the work is divided into two chapters. The first chapter is focused on the European Union. So starting from the Eastern enlargement that started in 2004, when Hungary with Balkanic countries joined the EU. And for this reason, I selected Hungary as the case. After, of course, the cases of violation, evident violation, and when was triggered against Hungary, Article 7 of Lisbon Treaty. Hungary played a key role in the European Union, in the political leadership of the European Union, and moreover played an important role in the Mediterranean migration crisis. For this reason, in the second part of the first chapter, I focused my attention on the Mediterranean migration crisis and the Dublin regulation, what it was supposed to be implementing with the Dublin regulation, and how Hungary responds to this crisis. So we know very well that Dublin regulation established that each member state has to accept a very certain number of refugees based on the democratic level. So Hungary was supposed to accept 1,328 refugees, if I remember well about number, and but Hungary didn't accept this number, and Hungary established we know the zero refugee strategy. So at the end of we can say that the Dublin regulation and the Article 7 are not very well implemented because of political leadership, political willingness, because of principally, first of all, legislative future about these articles and these treaties. And it was known before COVID-19, but during COVID-19 until now, it appeared evident that COVID-19 was not only a global health crisis, but it was really in the European Union an excuse to strengthen the executive power by leaders and to make a migration crisis that is not about crisis about numbers, but it is a crisis about human rights, about humans. Taking advantages by COVID-19, leaders are making this situation more and more worse. So in the first chapter, the situation is not different, because the second chapter is focused on the Latin America, and I started to write the second chapter since the first democratization waves in Latin America started in 1978, and the role of the Organization of American States in promoting and guaranteeing the respect of democracy, the rule of law, freedom, protection of human rights, according to Article 3 of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. So I took into consideration the case of Venezuela. Venezuela, since Maduro came to power after the Chavez regime, and how Venezuela is facing a democratic backsliding, has faced democratic backsliding before COVID-19, and now is facing not only a democratic backsliding with the not protection of freedom, dignity, freedom of press, etc., the rule of law principally, but is facing during COVID-19 even the migration crisis that is in outgoing. And according to the United Nations and the United Council of Human Rights, the migration crisis in Venezuela is unpredictable and unpredicted. It is overpassing the Syrian migration crisis. So at the end of this first chapter, I demonstrated very clear the problem inside the Organization of American States. Why this institution is failing in punishing a member state that is evident that is violating human rights and democracy principles. So it is because legislative future about treaties, because of the voting system, because of the political willingness, such as in the European Union, political leadership, and it is because of, moreover, the tendency to exclude regional and international organizations and players in attempt to restore, an attempt to guarantee a sustainable, in the deep meaning of the term, sustainable democracy in the country. So in conclusion, when after having analyzed these two parts of the hemisphere and what is happening in these two parts of the hemisphere, I arrived at one point, so that, in my opinion, multilateral cooperation on regional and international level is like a key button to be pushed in order to perk democracy up, to guarantee a very sustainable democracy, protection of human rights. So Hungary and Venezuela, as I said at the beginning of my speech, look very so far apart. Maybe because their geographical location, I'm not sure. But if we look at them with critical lens, And if we look at them analyzing culture, social points of view, we can say that Hungary and Venezuela are the two sides of the same coin. They are the great example of the cyclicity of history. What is happening in Venezuela is in reality what happened in Hungary and the European Union. So the democratic backsliding, the migration crisis are the two elements, the violation of the rule of law, that link these two, the two sides of the my coin. So for this reason, I enhanced the cooperation and the involvement of international players, because for this reason, it is possible, it may be possible to get to obtain bidirectional benefits, because we have the past, Venezuela has the past, the Latin America is the present, and now really we can create how is in English? It is like iron tube, a connection between these hemispheres. It is true that in the past and over the years, European Union, Latin America developed relations, and now are developing relations. But we have to push the situation in order to restore democracy and to restore the protection of human rights. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Angela. Stephanie, you have the floor. Sorry, you have to switch the microphone on.
Yes,
okay.
It's on. Is it on now? Yes, yeah, sorry. Yeah. I almost turned my video off. You know, we all do this. Hi, everyone. It is really my great honor and pleasure to be here, and also to say, first of all, what a delight it is to work with Angela. It has been a delight to work with Angela. I am incredibly proud of the work that she did in New York under extreme circumstances, both before and after the pandemic. Angela has shown tremendous personal courage, and I really want to honor her and honor her family for going through what they did with the tremendous geographic separation. I'm also delighted that this technology, although I almost didn't unmute myself, I want to say how delighted I am that this technology allows me to be here today with you. I am very impressed with Angela's thesis. I agree with my esteemed colleague that it is an original piece of work. Angela started her research on the Inter-American Democratic Charter in my course on Western Hemisphere Affairs, Past, Present, and Future at the Mark School at Baruch College, and to see her really blossom as a researcher and also see her work develop into this very impressive comparative study is really something that's incredibly gratifying for me as an advisor. I cannot take credit for this in the least. I have been here encouraging her along. I just wanted to ask a very brief question to give you an opportunity to expand on this idea about the role of multilateral institutions, because I could really ask you, if these are multilateral institutions that are dedicated to liberal democracy and are based on the principles of liberal democracy, then why would those international organizations be the solution to a crisis of liberal democracy? Right? At this point, what we see, and one of the things that we talked about was that in the wake of the financial crisis of 2008, sorry, my computer is about to die. In the wake of that financial crisis, the soft power of both the U.S. and the European Union declined. And there were many, and we look at this at the decline of the appeal of liberal democracy and the rise of the appeal of the Chinese system, state capitalism, ethnic nationalism, and particularly in the former communist states, this rise of nationalism. So what do you think needs to happen? You're talking about building this connection between Europe and the United States, but what needs to happen to help these institutions regain their appeal and the appeal of liberal democracy? Because if you think about it, the populations that voted these these populist governments into office, both of the right and the left, as you say, two sides of the same coin. That was an important observation. They turn around and say, we voted for these leaders because we don't trust this other, the idea of liberal democracy. So I'd like to ask what you particularly, you can focus on the European Union, you could focus on the OAS, or talk a little bit more about what you see as that connection. How can that connection help to restore? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much for your words that you said for me. Thank you so much. So about your question, I think, and I'm sure about my opinion, that we have an example of how this cooperation could be. We have an evidence. In 2019, the European Union institutionalized the International Group of Contact for the Venezuelan case. So instead of take a meeting once a year, so this international group of contact on Venezuelan situation meet every 90 days. So every 90 days they meet in order to create a common upstanding understanding about the Venezuelan case and take a direct situation. So this solution, this decision to institutionalize a group of contact that is different from other institutions, and the involvement of Norvegia is important because we have a result. The last news is that Maduro on May 19th, Maduro accepted to have a dialogue with a meeting with the European Union, with the opposition, that is Guaido, with the opposition, but with a condition. Only in presence of the European Union and only in presence of Norvegia. That is because we know very well that the European Union has a history, a strong history of democracy, and so we have a lot to teach to the other points of the hemisphere. So I think that this situation is getting to be fixed, in the sense that a peer review about mechanism, instead of waiting a lot of months in order to meet in the Council, in the General Assembly, in the European Parliament, in the European Commission, we have a direct group of contact. So there we have ministers, we have people that know very well about this situation, and okay, the situation is that we know very well a common understanding of the Venezuelan case. So we have a result. So I think that the solution is getting better. The fact that Maduro accepted a dialogue with the opposition is really, and not only the European Union, even the involvement of Mercosur, of UNASUR, and CELAC, that are regional, in Latin America, regional institutions that have just in the constitutions of each organization or in regulations basic principles and maybe solution to return Venezuela in the right direction. So, for example, UNASUR from its trade could play a great role in the dialogue with Venezuela, or CELAC, for example, could be a powerful alternative instead of sanction directly Venezuela, as did the United States. So United States increased the price of petrol, and it is not a solution. Yes, it is a solution, but in this way, this kind of solution directly touch each citizen, each person in the country. So, and in this way, we know very well that we push a country toward the opposite, so toward Chinese, toward the opposite sphere, that is the opposite of the United States. That is what is happening in European Union, because sanctions, because it is not the same in reality. It is a little bit the same in the sense that in the European Union, member states are feared to punish directly Hungary, a member state, because they are worrying to like create it is like a spillover effect. It is like to create panic, chaos, but at the same time, in this way, it is like Hungary is very, very closed in going toward the Russian sphere. An evidence is the buying of vaccine. So we, at the beginning of the spread of vaccine, Hungary was the first case that bought vaccine for COVID-19 by Russia, by other countries outside the European Union. So the solution, what will be? In the European Union, I think the peer review of the treaty, the Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty, or a peer review of the Lisbon Treaty, because we have not an article in the Lisbon Treaty or in the Treaty of the European Union that allow to kick out a member state. So we have Article 15, yes, but we have not an article that allows to kick out a member state. Another problem is that there is the voting system established in Article 354 of the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union that established that a member state in question has not the right to take a part of the voting in the council when the unanimity have to decide if to suspend or not the right. And the mutual veto, moreover, that was declared by Hungary and Poland. So if Poland has to vote against Poland, so they declare the mutual veto, so the qualified majority is not reached, never. So the solution is, sorry, the water on my table, oh my God. Sorry. So the solution could be a peer review of these principles. And in Latin American case is the same, because in the Inter-American Democratic Chapter, Article 22 of the Inter-American Democratic Chapter allows to reintegrate a member state that violates that. So in this way, we have a high level of moral hazard, because a member state may say, okay, I violate because one day maybe I have the right to get again integrated. No, it's not in this way. If you sign that treaty, if you sign a regulation, you have the right to follow the principle established in these treaties.
Sorry to interrupt you, Angela.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your explanation. You made it clear your opinion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Golob. Professor Silei, thank you so much.
So, any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Professor Golob, for joining us. Thank you to the supervisor, Professor Silei, for assisting Angela in this research work. And okay, if you agree, we skip to the next candidate.
Sorry, Professor Francioni, I don't know, the professor will stay here until the end of the graduation day, or she can go. I don't know if she has a problem or another event.
Well, actually, I don't know, but Professor Golob, if you want, you can stay here with us, but don't worry. If you have something else to do, you can leave us. We thank you again for joining us, for being with us, and for your support, obviously.
Thank you very much. Yes, the uncertainty is will there be some sort of there's another part that I'm participating in, because so I will say goodbye then.
Thank you, Professor Golob.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Saleh, as well. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao. So now we skip to the next candidate. Alice Simeunovic, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, we can see you. And Alice Simeunovic has submitted a thesis in public diplomacy, the title of which is Serbia and the East-West Chess Game, Public Opinion and the EU Membership from the Eurozone Crisis to the Coronavirus Pandemic. The supervisor is Professor Francioni, the co-supervisor is Professor Sabrina Cavatorto. Francesco, you have the floor.
I hope you can hear me, because the connection here to Mattioli is not very good. So I'm connected with my hotspot. Okay, very good. Now, just a few words of introduction for this thesis, which is, an attempt to shed light on the troubled EU accession process of Serbia, with interesting comparisons of the political, economic, cultural influence exerted not only by the European Union, but also by other big powers, namely Russia, the United States, and China on the Balkans during the unfolding of major crises experienced by the European Union. Now, we all know the extent to which the Balkan region has increasingly become an area of strategic confrontation between the East and the West. And this thesis, I think, has the merit to consider how this confrontation is reflected on the Serbian public's perception and evaluation of these major powers, these four major powers, as well as the expectations of EU officials with respect to the future Serbia's EU membership. Now, for this purpose, the candidate relied both on secondary data acquired through national and European surveys conducted in the last decades, but at the same time, she conducted interviews with personnel from the European Union. So from the European External Action Service, the delegation of the European Union to Serbia, and finally, if I'm not wrong, the DG NEAR for the European Commission. Now, I don't want to anticipate the results, but interestingly, and this is one of the main points addressed by this thesis, one of the findings show that the European Union's expectations do not always match the Serbs' attitudes towards the European Union and towards the accession process. So there is this mismatch between expectations and reality as far as public opinion is considered. And this mismatch is worth of examination, I think, since the positioning of the Balkan region and the Balkans in the European sphere must not be taken for granted. So there are other influential actors in this area that are competing with the European Union, as already anticipated by the last candidate. But I'll leave the floor to Alicia so that she can present a research in greater detail.
Yes, actually I have a presentation I'm going to share with you. I'm trying. Can you see the slides?
We can see the screen, but it's a black screen.
So I'll try again.
No, Alice, you have to put the presentation on your screen.
Yes, I did it, actually.
Okay,
yeah.
Now we can see your presentation.
Well.
No?
No? You
No.
can't use...
You can
yeah.
have to put your presentation on the screen, on your screen.
Yes, now can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Well. So to begin with, this thesis aims to discuss the integration process of Serbia in the European Union, focusing on the evolution and current state of Serbs' public opinion perception. Serbia has been selected as a case of study to examine if there has been a shift in public opinion perception from the beginning of negotiation in 2013 up to the present deadlock. For the purpose of this work, I decided to devote my attention to the latest European Union crises which have affected the Union itself. In particular, I focused on the Eurozone crisis, the migration, the Brexit, and the most recent one, the coronavirus pandemic. The purpose was to understand to what extent the European Union has been affected and to what extent it can be still considered a credible and reliable partner for the Balkan region. With that in mind, we will see that the enlargement policy has become increasingly problematic and its stagnation has affected the ability of the Union to remain a reliable actor in the Balkans. Consequently, Serbia's path to the European Union integration has been generally very rocky and the country is still in the waiting room. Furthermore, the long-standing relationship between Serbia and the Union has produced a public opinion which starts becoming more and more anti-European. I'll briefly look at the key elements of my work, so let's move on to the next item, and I would like to give you an overview of the crucial steps of Serbia's application for joining the Union. Serbia applied for the European Union membership in 2009. It was given the status of candidate country in 2012, and negotiations have started in 2013. At present, 18 out of 35 chapters have been opened, but unfortunately, only 2 have been definitely closed. As we all know, the enlargement of the Balkan is not a new phenomenon, since it started in 2004 when Slovenia joined the Union. Then it was followed by Croatia in 2013, but unfortunately, since 2013, the process seems to have come to a halt, since not much progress has been made. The relationship between the European Union and the Balkans have considerably increased in the aftermath of the Yugoslavian Civil War since the 2000s, when the Union has understood how that region plays a crucial role for the strategic autonomy of the Union itself. And there is evidence on the fact that the Union has brought stabilization as well as growth in that area. Serbia is expected to join the Union by 2025, but unfortunately, nobody looks at this data as a credible time framework. You may wonder why that country is still in the waiting room and far from reaching the membership. And if on one hand, the Union is aware of the difficulties faced by candidate countries in complying with the European Union requests, on the other hand, it is even true that candidate countries are experiencing their own version of the enlargement fatigue, since they really struggle to comply with the European Union. For instance, the conditionality principles, which is at the basis of the enlargement process, have proved to be an obstacle to the accession of the acceding country. We cannot neglect that the European Union has recently shown a lower capacity to integrate new members, and this was mainly due to the European Union internal crises, which have affected the Union and which resulted in higher fragmentation among member states. It's not surprisingly, member states became reluctant to admit new members, since they felt more inward and concerned about internal issues rather than enlargement. And as a consequence, the Union was forced to remove the enlargement process from the top of the agenda. And of course, This has sent a negative sign to the candidate countries. However, a further point to mention is Serbia's willingness to change that cannot be disregarded. Because it is true that Serbs policymaker, still look at the Union as Serbia's ultimate goal, but it's even true that Serbia is the least aligned country with the European Union Declaration. And as we all know, if a country wants to join the Union, it has to align completely with the European Union Declaration. As I mentioned earlier, the European Union has struggled to maintain a current image in the global arena and to present itself as a trustworthy partner vis-à-vis the Balkans. Data show that the percentage of European Union citizens who felt fairly pessimistic about the future of the Union has increased from 22% in 2008 up to 30% in 2019. Unfortunately, this attitude is not only true among member states, but even in candidate countries, which seems less interested in joining the Union. So the question to be answered is if Serbs still want to join the Union, despite the increasing Euroscepticism within the Union itself. And in order to answer that question, I would like you to pay attention to the graph that I'm going to show you. So let's turn our attention to the first one, which is about Serbs' view of a possible European Union membership. These data are from Eurobarometer Interactive, and I analyzed since the year 2013, which is when negotiations started, as I mentioned earlier, up to the most recent data available, which were in 2019. From the beginning of negotiation in 2013 up to 2016, these pictures show that the support for the Union has lost ground. You may argue that 2016 was a crucial year for the Union, since Brexit was on the verge of happening and the migration topic was the most debated topic at the European Union level. Although there is no empirical research showing that these crises have concretely affected the integration path of Serbia, we cannot neglect that Brexit might have impacted public opinion, and if it has not pushed Serbia away from its goal, at least it has postponed it. Fortunately, since 2016, the situation started reversing up to 2012, when the most positive attitude was recorded. And around 44% of the respondents answered that the European Union membership would be a good thing. Let's move on to the next graph, which is about the possibility of holding a referendum. Again, data are taken from the Ministry of European Integration of Serbia, and people were asked if referendum were held tomorrow in Serbia, how would you vote? In this case, I decided to put even the year 2007, which was before that negotiation have started, in order to show you how the attitude of Serbian public opinion has changed over time. Since in 2007, more than 70% of respondents would have voted for joining the Union. This percentage strongly decreased between 2011 and 2016, when again, the lowest peak was recorded, and only 45% of respondents would have voted for joining the Union. However, you may notice that a referendum would have likely passed between 2018 and 2009. But let's compare the situation of Serbia with the rest of the Balkans. The situation changed completely, and I decided to put that graph in order to show you how tricky a graph may be. Because this charter shows us how Serbia is an outlier in the Balkan region. Surprisingly, Kosovo is the country which supports the most a possible integration in the Union. The fact that Serbia is an outlier, the reason has to be found in the rising influence of China and Russia's conditionality, which cannot be disregarded. And in fact, Serbia is really at the crossroad and is really conflicted between Eastern powers and Western ones. As can be observed in some of the previous Soviet republics, even in Serbia, there is a widespread support for a stronger Russia. Although it is claimed that Russia is supporting Serbia integration in the Union, as a never opposed only to have a Trojan horse within the Union, contrary to Russia, Serbia has insisted on several occasions that Russia can really be a plan B in case the European membership fails. As far as China is concerned, the relationship between Serbia and China has considerably improved in the aftermath and during the pandemic crisis, when Serbia moved towards China in looking for help. And so in other words, the Union must be aware of the fact that Serbia is a country of strategic importance for the European Union autonomy, and it is important for the European Union to increase and to keep its influence in order to avoid that other global power can fill the gap left by the European Union. To wrap up everything, we cannot say that the European Union has lost its attractiveness, or neither we can say that Euro enthusiasm has vanished in Serbia, since, as emerged from the interview that I conducted with the European Union officials, they told me that Euro enthusiasm concretely has never existed in Serbia. And the reason was the solid presence of both China and Russia. However, although the Union can still count on its attractiveness because that country still wants the Union, it has to provide a credible perspective accession as well as a predictable perspective in order to avoid second thoughts and to avoid further disintegration. And in fact, counting on long-lasting Euro enthusiasm is important even after the accession is completed, in order to avoid another situation as it happened with the Brexit, actually. Consequently, the European Union has to catch up with reality and to admit that assuming that Serbia has no alternative, that joining the Union is an erroneous assumption, since the influence of China and Russia in particular is really strong. And the Union has to consider the Western Balkan as an integral part of the European Union project, since it is in the interest of the Union to complete its project. All things considered, further enlargement is definitely possible, but unfortunately after 2025. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Alice. Now, Sabrina, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, if possible, I would like to give to Alice the opportunity to be back to the last chapter of the thesis, which was introduced by Professor Mastroni, that I found really very interesting, even in terms of research effort. So I would like to ask you, if you could tell us something more about the added value that you could find on that material, because on the one hand, congratulations, because it is not a simple things to be done by students. To be able to collect interviews from you officials, so really well done. So I would like to know more about these findings that you could add to secondary data that you already analyzed.
Yes, actually, I decided to conduct this interview to have a more in-depth knowledge of how the process is really, it really works. And unfortunately, I had to conduct this interview with both Serbs policymakers and European Union officials, but I didn't receive any reply from Serbs policymakers, so my research was restricted only to European Union officials' perspective. But of course, I strongly believe that it brings an added value to my work, since on several occasions their opinion confirmed what I read on papers, but on other situations I got to know something new and a different perspective. So I decided to divide the interviews in 4 topics. So the first part was devoted to the credibility of the accession perspective, and to the extent to which 2025, which is the time provided by the European Union, can still be considered concrete and tangible. The second section was about the issues of Kosovo, which is one of the most relevant issues. And although people believe that Kosovo is one of the main constraints to the Serbia membership, I discovered that in reality, public opinion is much more concerned about other issues such as democracy, the rule of law, transparency, corruption, which is a relevant topic in the Republic of Serbia. And for example, this was something that I didn't expect, because I strongly, I believe that Kosovo was the main relevant issue for public opinion. And another section was devoted to the influence of external powers, such as the US, Russia, and China. And the last section was about public opinion itself, and if public opinion was aligned with policymaker ideas. And I had the impression that policymakers are more interested in joining the European Union than actually public opinion is. And during these interviews, a further point that I discovered is that, in particular, during the pandemic crisis, the Serbian president turned to China, and he accused the European Union of lacking solidarity, because, as we all know, the Union was strongly affected by the coronavirus pandemic, and the help of the Union arrived later with respect China and Russia. So in the eyes of public opinion, this has played a massive role, because actually they could benefit from Eastern powers.
I lost you.
Can you hear me?
Okay. So sorry, I lost the last part. So in the end, Alice, could we say that the problem is within the European Commission, not
no,
public opinion?
That, but I have to admit that these representatives were quite honest when they told me that both Serbia and the Union are guilty at the same time, because it is true that, as I said before, that Serbia is not ready to change completely, but it's even true that the Union has felt more in war and concerned really about internal issues rather than enlargement. So
yes. Thank you, Alice. I think that's enough. I mean,
thank you.
Thank you for commenting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Any other issue to raise? No. Okay. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Professor Mastroni. Thank you, Professor Cavatorto.
Thank you.
That is Rebecca Storky. Rebecca, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Rebecca Storky has submitted a thesis in European politics, the title of which is Brexit, a case of European disintegration. with the question mark. The supervisor is Professor Sabrina Cavatorta, and the co-supervisor is Professor Gianni Silei. Professor Cavatorta, the floor.
Yes, thank you. So I'm sorry because yeah, now the connection is worse again. So I try moving, but okay. I hope that you can hear me well. So, well, actually, we remain in some sense in the same field of analysis. Poly-crises are at the very core of our debate and reasoning. So we cannot say from Serbia to the UK, but I mean, more or less, yes, integration, the possibility for the EU to be able to attract and maintain states and partners inside is at the core, at the center of the table. Well, actually, Rebecca had an ambitious aim in a sense that she started to reflect about the Brexit crisis, but from a positive point of view, by asking to what extent, especially after 2 years of very troublesome negotiations, if really, I mean, Brexit could be, an example of a spillover effect. So the problem of disintegration following the Brexit referendum was at the core of the research questions by Rebecca. And yes, the question was mainly about which impact for the EU as a whole. So if I summarize properly, I do not want to leave the floor to my shoulder, but leave it to Rebecca by presenting, mainly the design of your work and major steps that you developed to reach which provisional, of course, conclusions, because we still are in an ongoing process, even if in the end UK is out, but who knows precisely what will happen. So thank you, Rebecca, and we are ready to listen to you.
Oh, thank you, Professor Cavatorta. I prepare a PowerPoint. Sure. A moment. You should be able to see it.
Not now.
Not.
But
now?
Not the best example.
Sorry, but
nothing is moving.
Not see your presentation.
Nothing is moving. So
okay.
At least from my desktop. So are you sharing the screen? I mean, I think it's not a problem of connection in your case, Rebecca.
Okay.
Otherwise,
second, sorry. No,
You should. Okay. Sorry, Rebecca. You should open your presentation and keep your presentation on your desktop.
Okay. Now.
Yes. Okay.
Now,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you're
here we are. Exactly.
So.
Okay.
You should see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so as Professor Cavatorta said, my master thesis is about Brexit, and I wanted to underline the relation between Brexit and the European integration process. My thesis was basically answering two main questions. If Brexit is a case of European disintegration, and if yes, what will be the consequence for the European integration project? So to answer these two questions, I decided to investigate three issues. The first one is the historical part, and my chapter was about researching in the history of the United Kingdom precursor signs of the British discomfort within the European Union. The second chapter was about the European integration theories, and I analyzed neo-functionalism, intergovernmentalism, post-functionalism, and the theories of differentiated integration. In my last chapter, I focus mainly in the Brexit negotiation. In the historical part, for me, it was important because is in the history that we could find the reason why the UK decided in 2016 to hold a referendum about their membership within the EU, and to the fact that then in 2020 the UK withdrew from the European Union. And my conclusion were that the Brexit is an event that can be viewed as the result of a long process of British exceptionalism. And maybe I can give more space to British exceptionalism later in the question if there will be space. But I would focus more on the theories of integration, because is in the theories that we can find the theoretical elements which related Brexit with the process of integration. So I started with neo-functionalism, and neo-functionalism is a theory that sees the integration process as an irreversible process and a process that continuously renovates itself. In fact, neo-functionalism is a positive theory. An important element of the neo-functionalism is also the spillover effect. In other words, is the statement for which the process of integration is spread. And as neo-functionalism is a positive theory, it doesn't really investigate the occur of a crisis. But Brexit is actually a crisis, and neo-functionalism can help a bit in understanding what happened with the Brexit case. According to neo-functionalism, a crisis is a negative response to the spillover effects. But since the integration process is irreversible, there will be reassessment of the supranational actor in order to limit the negative response to the integration process. And it's something that we could observe with Brexit, because the supranational actors within the European Union were very active during all the process of Brexit negotiation. And for supranational actors, I mean the European Commission, even the European Parliament, the European Council, and also the Council of Europe. Let's move on to intergovernmentalism. Intergovernmentalism is also a positivist theory, but its focus is on the nation, on the country. And according to intergovernmentalism, the integration process is developed if the countries see a personal bargaining in the integration process. So how to frame the Brexit within this theory? I found out that according to intergovernmentalism, if we see in the Brexit negotiation all the difficulties that UK had to pass through, it emerged that the Brexit was a very problematic decision, and in the end, only the Great Britain was the actor who had much to lose. So also intergovernmentalism sees Brexit mainly as an event that is not likely to spread around other members of the European Union. Then I analyze post-functionalism, and post-functionalism introduced two variables in this framework that are public opinion and identity. And it turned out that these two variables are very important when dealing with Brexit, because if we analyze all the process who bring to the Brexit referendum, we see that the majority of the people who vote leave was convinced that they were deciding to leave because of a question of identity. Post-functionalism is not, as neo-functionalism and intergovernmentalism, a positivist theory. So it opened the possibility for disintegration. But to remain in the Brexit case, it's too early to say whether Brexit will lead to more disintegration or will remain an isolated event. And then the last but not less important theory is the differentiated integration theory, which is very important because differentiation is something that we can observe every day in the European Union. For example, through differentiation, the European Union allow members of the Union to opt out from some laws, and on the same acquis, it allows non-members of the European Union to benefit of union law. On the contrary, the disintegration opened the possibility to an increase of the receptive mobilization. That is something that we also saw with Brexit. In fact, there are two outcomes possible. On one side, starting with the referendum, so starting with Cameron, Brexit initiated the debate on the possibility to have a more reformed Europe. That could have as an outcome the increase of differentiation within the EU. But on the other side, there are some scholars who agree more that being the United Kingdom, the country with the most of the opt-outs, the fact that UK is not anymore in the EU could lead to a less differentiation. In my last chapter, I focus on the Brexit negotiation, and I wanted to analyze the main problems that UK and EU faced that are not little. First of all, I open the discussion about the Brexit negotiation with the Article 50, which is the article of the Treaty on the European Union, which actually allow a member state, to withdraw. But I found out that what is written in the article is not really regulated. So in the end, there were the possibility for the UK to prolong the negotiation for such a long time. but to remain focused on the problems between UK and EU, there was difficulty in find an agreement, because the three issues that you can see in my on the slides, that are the Irish border issues, the future relation agreements, and the UK domestic policy. So about the Irish border issues, for example, Theresa May started is she builds her Brexit deal on the fact that UK had to leave the single market, but she didn't want neither a border between the Northern Ireland and Ireland, neither between Ireland and the Europe. So here we can see the inconsistency of a Brexit deal, because UK leaving the EU, it means that there must be a border somewhere. The question was where. About the future relation, I focus on the fact that on one side there was UK pretending to start the negotiation for future relation already before having reached a deal about leaving the EU. And on the other side, we had EU that didn't want to start the future relation agreement before UK actually left the EU, and also to avoid an unfortunate situation with third countries, because the EU didn't want to give space for too much benefits for the UK, since when the UK left the EU is not anymore a member, and it can be treated as a third country.
Rebecca, sorry for interrupting you, but Rebecca, sorry for interrupting you, but I think that I mean, even the Commission will appreciate if I mean, focusing on the Brexit negotiations, and possibly you can conclude on this point, since you described before the theoretical contributions that, I mean, each of the different pieces of theories which characterize the process of European integration, development, and so on and so forth. But accordingly to the examples that you are describing us, I mean, could you tell us something more about, in the end, when analyzing the negotiation phase, is there any theoretical account which testifies to be more useful, I mean, in understanding what was happening, even when looking at what did it mean for the EU as a whole? Possibly, if you could conclude on this point, that would be very, very good.
Yes. So, in my point of view, the theory who best represents, who best describes what happened with Brexit is the post-functionalism, because it includes more variables. And since Brexit is a case very variegated, that can be analyzed under many different aspects, I think that a theory who at least try to take into account different variables is the best one, that it fits better. But as you also already said in the introduction, my initial question was how we can frame Brexit within positivist theories such as neo-functionalism and intergovernmentalism. And I don't know, maybe because I'm young and I'm part of the EU generation, I still think that also these theories, even if they are not so modern anymore, are valuable. Yes. Maybe should I take off the presentation because I see just.
Thank you, Rebecca. If Professor Cavatot agrees, we can. We can.
Yes, I think that's enough. We could ask to Professor Silei if he would like to ask you something more, so to complete, your presentation. That would be more effective, I think. So to have some discussion.
Yeah, thank you. No, especially in the last part of your intervention, Rebecca, you have in some ways answered to what I was about to ask you. I was interested in the so-called, the main question, of course, that even Professor Cavatot posed. How you explain this phenomenon, Brexit. And I was interested in having your opinion about the so-called British exceptionalism. Is something that is related to what you have analyzed, and which forms of this exceptionalism that has many different shades emerged during the Brexit? According to your opinion, in short, just in a flash.
Yes, I think that Brexit exceptionalism, British exceptionalism, is the main reason why UK are right to make the referendum and then leave, because I strongly believe that not other countries, even the more Eurosceptic countries, are likely to leave the EU soon. But UK is a completely different case. We cannot discern from the historical path that was somehow different from the path that the continental European countries followed. And that's why I also said that post-functionalism is very helpful in frame the Brexit in a theory, because we cannot discern from the public opinion and the role of identity. And even if there is not yet an European identity, we must say that the British identity is very strong. And any surveys conducted in the UK show that no matter the age or the level of education, but the majority of the people still consider them firstly British. And I said British because British exceptionalism is first of all the British identity, and another history is about the Wales, Scottish, or Irish identity.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, if I may, to conclude, I would like to say that in some sense we could consider post-functionalism with the stress that approach puts on the politicization of the EU, as you said, mentioning the role of identity and, yes, the important role of public opinion be involved in the political processes relating to EU issues. It can explain in a more effective way that previous theories, the so-called dense part of the Brexit story. The point now is to understand to what extent, for instance, according to differentiation in the different way it has been described as being, something that could be related with member states internally to the EU, or even to non-member states externally to the EU, could be useful to think in a constructive way the future. What for the EU and even for EU-UK relations. But this will be part of another thesis.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I can answer maybe. So I think that I agree with the majority of the scholars that there is no agreement at all on how much disintegration is helpful or not. I think that, as I showed in my slides, there are a few points that are very positive about disintegration that are living. I agree with members that want to opt out, and I agree with non-members who would like to participate in a few laws. In this sense, disintegration is a very useful tool. But if we look at the Brexit case, a certain level of disintegration that it goes beyond the limits, it can be very dangerous for the integration of the Union itself. What can the European Union learn from the Brexit is that it can be done more for ensure the members and also the non-members that being part of the European Union brings effective benefit, and so that exit is not the best chances for members. But maybe in this sense, the European Union could work more in the image that it gives to the rest of the world and to the rest of Europe.
And that's a good conclusion for your discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for your discussion. And now we have the last bit for today. That is to say, Mudsir Ali. Mudsir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we can see you. Okay. Mudsir Ali submitted a thesis in contemporary European history, the title of which is Relationship Between the Soviet Union and Europe. The supervisor is Professor Gianni Silei, and the co-supervisor is me. So, Professor Silei, you have the floor.
Thank you, Andrea. Mudsir's thesis is trying to reconstruct in adopting in a sort of long-term approach the European policy of Soviet Union, trying to analyze whether directly, we could say, or indirectly, this policy contributed to unify the idea of Europe in some ways. And in this sense, the reference to the European Union in the title refers not so much to the institution, not only the institution, but to the idea of Europe and to the role of a Europe that, as we know, after the Second World War was divided. So I would ask Mudsir to explain to the committee the content of his research, even in this case, what were the main goals, what are your conclusions, what emerged from your analysis. And I would ask you in particular, I'm interested in continuities and discontinuities between the European policy of the Soviet Union and that of present-day Russia in particular. What has changed, if something changed? So, Mudsir, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I am very glad to supervise by you and Andrea Francioni, and it's my honor. And after that, it should be a very, I must admit that I am very thankful for my professors. Some of them are still present here. I can see Sabrina Cortoto and Professor Lorenzi.
So it was my honor to be as a student with you. So I have some slides to present, and when some of your questions you ask, so I will try to answer at the end. So let me share my screen first. Is it visible to everybody?
Yeah. Now we can see your presentation, but you have to put the presentation on. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mutsi.
Okay. So the title of my presentation today is for relationship between Soviet Union and European Union, and I tried to analyze that how the USSR contributed toward the unity of the European Union. For this purpose, I analyzed a lot of reports, case studies, and so many literature, a lot of things. Yeah, so these are. So these are my table of contents. So today I will be trying to explain some of them. So as I should be strict to the time as well, but I will try to shed light on this content. First of all, let me introduce here. So this research aimed to identify the contribution or the role of the Soviet Union in the unity of European Union, that how Soviet Union contribute, or the Soviet Union contributed toward the unity of the European Union. What were the causes that the European nation became together, and ultimately we can see in the European Union. So so before going to the depth in this, so I would like to introduce here that or to remind you that the role of the Soviet Union in the history. So it is significant to analyze first the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, officially the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, was a socialist state that spanned most of the Europe and Asia during its existence from 1922 to 1991. Its government and economy were highly centralized until its final year, and it was one of the huge country of the world when it was existed, almost like 86,49,500 square miles, and there was almost 11 time zones. So afterward, when the Bolshevik took over the control of Russian Empire in 1918, Germany and US came up as a surveyor at that time and provided assistance with the finance, defense, and other economical factors. By the end of 1920, however, Nazi Germany attacked and the Soviet Union in 1941, and all of it came across something really over the edge, and difficulty for both lingered and Moscow, according to the defense and economic point of view, whereas Soviet Union was sufficiently able to vanquish Germany. Yeah. So what happened next? American and European alliance at the Soviet authority over Eastern Europe, prompt war with Western Europe coordinated monetarily with a huge amount of Marshall Plan that received from United States as a result of reconstruction or for the rebuilding. A communist government took power in Afghanistan, yet was a hard squeeze and mentioned a military assistance from Moscow. Finally, Soviet soldier eliminated from Afghanistan, and that move was welcomed by the United States. That was a turning point of the history of Soviet Union. And in the final decade of its existence, the Soviet Union consisted of 15 Soviet Socialist republics. The republic played an important role in the collapse of Soviet Union. Throughout the late 1980s, the Soviet government attempted to find a new structure which would reflect the increasing power of the republic. These efforts proved unsuccessful, and in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. The overall international strategy or the objective of the Union were formalized in a gathering program confirmed by the delegate in the year 1986. Soviet international strategy was generally worried about the superpower relation and considering the United States as a primary danger at the public security. In my critical analysis, I analyzed that for the greater part of the year after the incident of the World War, The framework had been described by the philosophical competition, bipolarity, and harmony among the significant power. By this era, after Second World War, throughout the Cold War era, I analyzed and the world seen that there was a philosophical competition between the capitalist bloc and the communist bloc, and the world had seen that the bipolarity. There was two major superpower, and there was almost harmony among the different blocs to cooperate each other against other power. The theory of power transition centered around the grounded state and drew suggestion from the collaboration of war and that upkeep of the chain of the design of the global framework. So in 1944 or 45, the Nazi German, the Soviet Union drew against the Nazi German, and they entered to the Eastern European state, and the Stalin, that he believed and he tried that to establish the satellite state around the Soviet Union to stop the Nazis or to stop the German or other power to attack on Soviet Union. There are various contentions that make an idealistic perspective on what we can expect later on having the basis of economy, finance, defense, and national strategy plan. Afterward, the breakdown of socialism and the Soviet Union prompted turmoil and progress in the district of Eastern European during the 1980s. They witnessed the rise in economy. So after the breakdown of or the disintegration of United Soviet Socialist Republic, so there was the uncertainty. There was one kind of turmoil throughout the Eastern Europe and throughout the bloc, and those countries who separated from the communism. So there can be seen a rise in economy, and the situation was a little bit improved. The level of the advancement from the communism to free venture was furthermore set by the Soviet pioneer Mikhail Gorbachev, allowed multi-party choice, enabled monetary change, and introduced two our reforms that was, if I'm not pronouncing wrong, Perestroika and Glasnost. So these were the turning points. Like throughout the 80s, so there was the Soviet Union tried to reform to accommodate better those state or those republic under the banner of socialist bloc, but the effort made by the Gorbachev remained unsuccessful, and that caused the disintegration of the Soviet Union. What was the aims and objective of my research? The aim of this research was to identify the contribution or the role of the Soviet Union in the unity of the European countries. The thesis aimed to show the contribution and idea that were the main lead to the Soviet Union and the European state, and how it all affected the political climate that was changed after the World War II. The goal of this thesis is to highlight the relationship between two such parties who were considered as the master of economy and their distinctive nature of trade. These mainly include USSR and Europe and America. The aim of this research is to provide bilateral approach about USSR, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe, that how the fear of Germany being strong again made them work in a coherent manner. As regarding the research methodology, so the research method of this research is qualitative research. The data was obtained by the research from the first-hand observation. The data collected was not non-numerical. The analysis of this thesis used a bilateral approach about the USSR, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe, and how the fear of Germany being strong again made them work in a coherent manner. And as regards the research limitation, the given research is undertaken on the geographical and political matter of the Soviet Union and Europe mainly. Yeah. The data analyzed in this research, the research has used the qualitative content analysis. I have used this method of data analysis in this research, and the research, the content analysis mainly on the qualitative method. Yeah. These are some of the findings which I found to share with you and show you that what I found on this point. So this research showed that more than half of the Eastern European idealized the fact of getting separated. The Soviet Union, where has had a defined boundary of every country to become part of cause or situation, while promoting Western Europe transition to socialism remain an ultimate Soviet objective throughout its existence. What is more relevant, the Soviet Union tried to hinder progress toward the West European unity under the European community or any other kind of move that was taken at that time. For this purpose, on that time, the Soviet Union used its influence and pressurized even the neutral states, Sweden, Austria, and Switzerland, that not to interact or to stop them to interacting with the European community. And not only this was the case, so the Soviet Union even imposed strict limitation on Finland that the ties should not be developed with the community or even to stop up to some extent. So furthermore, the Soviet Union pursue a two-pronged policy toward the European community. On the one hand, it used every man at its disposal to limit the community further development and to negate its political importance. Soviet Union, for this purpose, Soviet Union even refused to accord diplomatic recognition to the community. So after the establishment of EC, Soviet Union did not accept it as a political figure and did not extend its diplomatic recognition. And Soviet Union furthermore tried that to undermine its supranational competence and even tried to engage bilaterally with each country that and adopt any strategy that EC community should not promote or extend further. But what happened? The establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community made USSR condemn any sort of intervention in the European Union. This made the people of Europe realize that the best of their profit and interest. So after this was the turning point in the history, that after the condemn and after the intervention in this European Coal and Steel Community, so the European nation recognized the threat or the importance of this community, that why or they become further together for the same cause. The main point of the contention of this Russian arrangement toward the European Union is the Russian impression of the EU and the interaction of the European coordination. Regarding the conclusion, so I found it that in conclusion, it can be said that the thesis evaluated the contribution of the Soviet Union and the European state. Moreover, it shed light on the political climate as well as how it made the effect on the economy of the Europe. The political participation was a medium of negotiation, negotiating regarding the shortcoming of the two parties and how their relationship was taken along with the United States predominance. The European Union strategy mostly incorporate lawfully and monetary measures, the competition among Russia and the EU fundamentally in 1978 originated from a clash of their interests. On the other hand, Moscow's biggest feeling of dread come over because of likelihood that the European political action would move toward the province, and that in a drowned out viewpoint, a proportion of these states, especially Ukraine, would acquiesce to the European Union. This cycle is supported by the clashing political values as the two political parties keep on advancing in inverse way. As regarding the question raised by my supervisor, the policy or the continuity of the European Union, the continuity of the previously Soviet Union and the currently Russia toward the European Union. So I will say that the most of the policies are still continued, or I will justify my position. Like the Soviet Union shared the border with Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and 5 of the European Union members. So frequently it interrupt or intervene in the internal or domestic affairs of these neighboring countries. But this is not only the case. In 2009, in July 2009, the former president of Poland and Lithuania and Czech Republic, they wrote an open letter and they admit that our desire to join the European Union and NATO to be accepted by the Russia as independent and sovereign state, unfortunately did not fulfill. And these are the words which the former president said, and they said that the Russia is still using the 19th century policies, and what they are doing, they have just used the tactics. They just changed the tactics due to the change in technology and due to the invention of internet and due to the change of the global. Well, they just changed their ways of involvement, and they are fighting one kind of hybrid war or interfering in our internal matter to destabilize. But this is not only the one case that I can justify my position, but there are some other aspects as well, that the Russia is still using its influence and to manipulate or to intervene in the internal affairs and the politics of the European state, and it is and on several parties and political parties, not only on the national level, even on the European level also. They are using different propaganda, and they are using money to manipulate and to change the situation in the favor of, and one kind of Eurosceptic sentiment should be developed. And there are clear-cut evidence as well, like that, like many scholars, that they are criticizing that Russia use, or they use its position for the triggering the Brexit and to manipulate the emotions of British people, and they use overt or covert method to make Brexit possible. So this is also one of, and there are so many other things that one can justify by saying this. And what are the discontinuity? So what I can assume that the discontinuity, what I can see after analyzing all these facts and figures. So the Soviet Union or the current Russia is not using, up to some extent, like the ideology as a mean to propagate throughout the world, especially in the European Union or adjacent neighbors. It's not promoting. It's my assumption. It's not promoting anymore the ideological aspect, like not encouraging the states on this is the one aspect, and the other thing is mostly like the military. The use of force is not using anymore. But only we have seen in 2014 the intervention in the Ukraine and the accession of Crimea to the Russia. So this is the only we have seen the only incident in the three decades that Russia use or continue its policy to use the force or to use any kind of method to intervene in the or intervene or to use force as a method to acquire its foreign policy objective.
Thank you, Mudsir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mudsir. I think that you provided a very clear overview of your work, of your research. So I don't have any questions to ask. It's enough for me. But any other questions on the part of the committee? No. Okay. So we are done with the discussions. Now, for the English-speaking audience, now the committee leave this virtual room, but you and I mean the candidates, you're kindly requested to stay here and wait a few minutes for the meeting to resume. Quindi per lo streaming, per i non parlanti inglese, comunque i parlanti italiano, la commissione ora si ritira in un'altra stanza per decidere i voti finali. Voi ovviamente, sia i candidati sia coloro che assistono in streaming, possono rimanere in questa stanza. Appena, questione di minuti, appena abbiamo deciso i voti, rientriamo nella stanza per le proclamazioni. Ok? Grazie a tutti, a fra poco.
Eccoci qua.
We are back, siamo tornati. Ovviamente non ho interrotto la registrazione perché erano troppe le cose da fare e più di una non riesco a farla. quindi riceverete invece che 2 file. You will receive not 2 files, but just 1 file with the whole session. Solo una registrazione con tutta la seduta, compreso il momento di silenzio fra le due parti, diciamo così. Ok, quindi possiamo iniziare e iniziamo con Lorenzo Laruina. Lorenzo, ci sei?
Salve, sì, ci sono.
Perfetto. Signor Lorenzo Laruina, visti i risultati della carriera accademica svolta e per i poteri conferitici dal magnifico rettore, la proclamiamo in nome della legge dottore in scienze politiche con la votazione finale di 98 su 110. Congratulazioni.
Grazie mille.
Ok. Now, Jamila. So, Mrs. Jamila Namazli.
Yes.
Given your academic career and the results of the final exam, you have been awarded by this graduation committee the master's degree in international sciences with the final grade of 101 over 110.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm gratitude all of you for company and give me a tremendous lecture and opportunity. Wish you all the best.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jamila. Benedetta Basso.
Eccomi.
Eccoci qua. Signora Benedetta Basso, visti i risultati della carriera accademica svolta e per i poteri conferitici dal magnifico rettore, la proclamiamo in nome della legge dottoressa magistrale in scienze internazionali con la votazione finale di 98 su 110. Congratulazioni.
Grazie.
Professore, le posso chiedere una gentilezza? È possibile avere la proclamazione in inglese in modo tale che...
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much.
Now, Angela Salvaggio, Mrs. Angela Salvaggio, giving your academic career and the results of the final exam, you have been awarded by this graduation committee the master's degree in international sciences with the final grade of 110 out of 110 with distinction. I mean, cum laude. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Silei, Professor Golob. Thank you so much, everybody.
Now we skip to Piera Faccidomo. Piera, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. The proclamation will be in Italian.
In Italian?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Signora Piera Luisa Faccidomo, visti i risultati della carriera accademica svolta e per i poteri conferitici dal magnifico rettore, la proclamiamo in nome della legge dottoressa magistrale in scienze internazionali con la votazione finale di 110 su 110. Congratulazioni.
Grazie.
Alice Simeunovic. Come si pronuncia esattamente il tuo nome? Simeunovic. Simeunovic. Ok? Proclamazione in italiano o in inglese? Siamo...
In italiano, grazie.
In italiano, perfetto. Dunque, signora Alice Simeunovic, visti i risultati della carriera accademica svolta e per i poteri conferitici dal magnifico rettore, la proclamiamo in nome della legge dottoressa magistrale in scienze internazionali con la votazione finale di 110 su 110 e la lode. Congratulazioni. Rebecca Storchi. Are you there? Ci sei?
Ci sono.
Materializzati. Ti vedo, ora ti vedo. Ora ti vedo. Italiano o inglese?
Italiano, per favore, grazie.
Ok. Signora Rebecca Storchi, visti i risultati della carriera accademica svolta e per i poteri conferitici dal magnifico rettore, la proclamiamo in nome della legge dottoressa magistrale in scienze internazionali con la votazione finale di 105 su 110. Congratulazioni.
Grazie.
Congratulazioni anche a lei. Bene, and now we skip to the English language for the last proclamation. Mutsir Ali,
yeah.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay. Mr. Mutsir Ali, given your academic career and the results of the final exam, you have been awarded by this graduation committee the master's degree in international sciences with a final grade of 108 out of 110. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ok, bene, congratulazioni di nuovo a tutti. Grazie a tutti per le interessanti discussioni, grazie a tutti i colleghi della Commissione, grazie al pubblico che ci ha seguito in streaming. Abbiamo concluso. I migliori auguri ovviamente ai candidati, ai neodottori per la loro carriera. Best wishes.
Grazie.
Congratulations, everybody.
Ciao, auguri a tutti.
Congratulations. Wish you all the best.
Congratulations.
Bye. Follow the good footsteps. Successful way.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Sabrina, Professor Sabrina Cavardorza. Thank you all, Professor Andrea, Silei, my professor Alessandra Viviani. I am happy to know all of you.
Thank you. All the best.
It's nice to see you.
Best wishes. Bye.
Ciao a tutti.
Bye bye.
Arrivederci.
Bye.
Nice evening.
Congratulazioni e auguri e buona serata a tutti.
Bye bye. Tanti auguri.
Auguri. Mi sentite dal presidio? Abbiamo concluso, quindi io saluto anche chi è rimasto in streaming. Grazie a tutti per la partecipazione e la presenza.